Introduction. We've been practicing manipulation even before we learned fancy terms for it. As babies, we manipulated our way into being fed and put to sleep. As toddlers, we cried aloud for the toys we wanted until our parents relented. As teenagers, we manipulated our way into the hearts of our dates. As professionals, we try to have our way with just about everyone, from our manager to co-workers to subordinates. There's just escaping from practicing the art of manipulation in everyday life, whether we like it or not. Even when I convinced you to download this book, I resorted to manipulation in some form, or did I? What is manipulation? Manipulation is fundamentally the art of getting others to do exactly what you want them to, not necessarily by paying attention to their desires, or in extreme cases, even harming them. It comprises a series of techniques such as charm, charisma, hypnotism, persuasion, trickery, coaxing, misinformation, and much more. The underlying objective of manipulation often is I need to trick people to lead them to give me precisely what I require or desire. However, not all forms of manipulation are bad. At times they can be used positively to turn the game around and help you get what is rightfully yours, or what you're being deprived. For instance, a stingy boss refuses to give you a promotion or pay raise that's been due for long. No forms of logical or meaningful persuasion work with him or her. In such circumstances, deceive. Manipulation can be used in a positive manner to help you get what is rightfully yours. Manipulation generally stems from a fundamental belief that your needs or desires are above everyone else's. You place yourself at the epicenter of the universe and believe everything revolves around your desires. It can be given a more positive twist when you realize that connect with other people and work towards aligning their desires with yours. In such a situation, you will end up positively manipulating people into doing what is good for them and you. This way you are likely to end up on their side and they'll not feel like they are being fooled. For instance, if you think there's no one who can keep your date or partner happier than you, you try and align their desires with yours. You know you will keep them happy when they get married to you and vice versa. There is a positive manipulation and persuasion, where he or she does not get the feeling that they are being tricked. You are in fact doing what is good for both him or her and you. As a person in love, you are trying to lead them into a powerful bond that you truly believe in. Is manipulation wrong here? Well, maybe not. Unlike persuasion, manipulation occurs at a deeper and subconscious level. It is carried out by attempting to change to the fundamental beliefs and experiences of people to get them to do what we want. This can be done by using a variety of raw and sophisticated methods, ranging from hypnotism to seduction or top-notch verbal skills. It is sometimes performed by distorting someone's idea of reality to get them to think and do what we want them to. People will then start behaving and thinking about reality precisely as the manipulator wants them to. Are you curious now? Sit back and read on. Understanding dark psychology. What dark psychology is not. Dark psychology is not applicable when it comes to other animals on the planet, as it is only humans that are prone to exhibiting the tenets of dark psychology. However, a critical look at the human condition will dissolve the theories of natural selection, evolution, and animal instincts, as humans are the only species that are able to prey on themselves without any apparent reason of procreation in order to survive and sustain humanity. Humans prey on one another for reasons that are not clear and cannot be sustained. It is this part of the human mental state, or what is known as the universal human condition, that dark psychology aims at addressing. The part that makes humans impel this predatory attitude. In dark psychology, it is believed that there is an intrapsychic part of human nature that makes people do what they do in terms of preying on others, and this part of human nature goes against the tenets of evolution. Humans are also the only other creatures on the planet that will kill one another for reasons other than the want of food, survival, territory, or procreation. For ages, philosophers and other ecclesiastical writers have made several attempts at looking at this phenomenon in order to explain it. What has only been discovered is the fact that it is only human beings that harm themselves without any form of rational motivation. It is assumed in dark psychology that there is a part of the human psyche that gives life to these dark and vicious characters, and this part within all human beings is universal. At this point in the past or in the future, there hasn't been any human creature that did not possess this dark side. Dark psychology isn't only the dark side of the moon, but the dark side of the combination of all the moons. It is a combination of everything that makes an individual who they are in relation to their dark sides. It is a trait that is present in every religion, culture, faith, as well as every race of humanity. From the point of birth to the point of death, there is an inherent not so pleasant side within everyone, which some have described as evil, while others call it deviant, criminal, and/or pathological. With dark psychology, there is an introduction of a third philosophical construct, which looks at these behaviors from a different angle aside from religious dogmas and contemporary theories of social science. To be successful, every individual must take an interest in their fellow humanity. It is from the lack of interest in others that every failure in life springs, and this causes great injury to others. All human failures arise from this type of individuals. Alfred Adler, A.N.D. Short history of dark psychology and mental manipulation. Throughout time, persuasion has evolved and changed from its early days. For many years, persuasion has existed. It has indeed existed since ancient Greece. That doesn't mean the art and persuasion process is exactly the same as before. Nevertheless, the art of persuasion and how it is used in today's times have changed considerably. Richard M. Perloff spent quite a while researching traditional ideologies, how they are used and how they can affect culture as a whole. He has written a book entitled The Dynamics of Persuasion, Communication and Attitudes in the 21st Century. The book discusses the 5 different ways in which current values are used than in past times. They include the number of messages considered as persuasion has risen in precarious numbers. In ancient Greece, persuasion was used only in writing and in debates between the elites. There wasn't much persuasion, and you wouldn't see it very often. Without some persuasion message accompanying you in modern times, it is difficult to get anywhere. Consider the different types and sources of ads that exist. Up to 3,000 of these are found every day in the United States. Besides that, people knock at your door, often try to make you buy something, believe in what they are selling, or try something new. Persuasion is, more than ever in history, a part of the modern world. Persuasion can be said that it travels very fast. It could take weeks or longer to get a persuasive message from one point to another in ancient Greece. The power of persuasion was therefore limited, as most people could not get the message in the sense of face-to-face contact. Many acts of persuasion had to be undertaken this way. In modern times, the use of the internet, radio and television is a reasonable source of persuading messages in hardly any time over a long distance. In just seconds, political candidates can be able to appeal to their constituents all at once, and each message can be quickly transmitted. Persuasion plays a significantly greater role if it can be distributed too quickly. Persuasion can mean a lot of money. Now, businesses have learned the power of persuasion, and they do all they can to make it work for them. The more successful they are to persuade consumers to buy their goods, the more money they get. Any organizations are only interested in the persuasion process, including public service firms, marketing companies, or advertising agencies. Other companies will be able to use the persuasive strategies provided by these organizations to meet and surpass their marketing targets. Persuasion has become subtler than it was in the past. At the start of persuasion, the persuader will make his views known clearly to the whole group, so that they will all change their minds. Those days have passed, and the persuasion process is far more discreet. Effects of dark psychology. I'd like to get you and me closer to home, but the side effect is larger. How is this mysterious phenomenon of dark psychology influencing us? Does it even impact us at all? Both the manipulator and the subject do experience the effects of dark psychology. We have to discuss other key elements of dark psychology in order to understand its influence. Those with certain personality traits that are seen as dark, like narcissism, psychopathy, and Machiavellianism, are likely to experience trouble in every way. They have a greater chance of committing a crime if all three traits are present in one person. Narcissism, for example, has a sense of entitlement, a sense of superiority, a deep-seated desire for other people's success, and exploitative conduct. Psychopathy has a lack of conscience, an absence of compassion, destructive impulsive behavior, self-centeredness, and failure to assume responsibility. Egotism, contempt, and coercion were signs of Machiavellian characteristics. Both features are problems separately, but they can cause problems together, especially in the relationship between an individual and others, where the person with all these character traits works. For example, the individual would have an insufficient performance at the workplace, even with the most mundane tasks. They are also likely to disrupt workflow due to their inability to live with others. They would be intensively hated by others. We have to face the following problems in personal relationships. Their constant need for attention and acceptance can be overwhelming to their partners, so the relationships they are in do end more easily. They use physical and emotional manipulation to control their partners. They also have the tendencies of being verbally, emotionally, or physically abusive to their partners or children. Were it you who experience this, you can seek psychological help so that you can get better. No matter how deeply rooted these problems are, you will strengthen your attitude and counseling experiences. The first step is to understand the situation, acknowledge that you have a problem, and seek assistance quickly. Those who deal with persons with characteristics of a narcissist, psychopath, and a Machiavellian will leave them feeling emotionally and mentally exhausted. The impact can sometimes be physical and fatal in extreme cases. There's a person I know whose terrible experience prompted me to write this book. Literally lost everything. Her home, her career, her financial affairs, but her loss was far more profound. We had no connection to the perpetrator, but we also became victims in the process. Our setbacks weren't as big as hers, but we also suffered loss. We lost our good neighbor, for starters. She never died, but from her experience, she has never quite recovered. We have lost our faith in strangers. We also seem to have a further need for confidence and trust in our relationships to survive. The greatest impact on anyone is that dark psychology creates a deep sense of loss. Some people lose their valuables, some also lose close ties with others, and sometimes the most unfortunate lose their lives. Given all this, the consequences of the darkness are strong. Psychology of manipulation. Theories on successful manipulation. Cognitive. There are many well-recognized psychological processes in theories regarding the art of persuasion. One of those is the cognitive response model developed by Anthony Greenwald in 1968. It is still relevant today for determining some factors in persuasion. It is also a model used extensively in the world of advertising. Greenwald suggested that it is not the words of the message that determines the success of persuasion, but more the emotions of the receiver. The internal monologue of the one receiving the message will be a deciding factor on how easy they are influenced. Such internal thoughts will include positive and negative aspects according to the individual's own personality. This is not a learning process, but more based on whether the person already views the message with favorable or unfavorable thought processes, cognitions. Overcoming any counter-arguments will rely on the expertise of the persuader. They should stop their target from having sufficient time to construct any counter-arguments. The persuader must encourage positive arguments to come to the forefront. This gives the persuasion effect a better chance of success. Persuasion can be more difficult if the intended target has been forewarned. It allows the target time to build their own counter-arguments if the message is counterintuitive to their present cognitions. The importance in pre-warning can be seen in research conducted by Richard E. Petty in 1977. The study showed that students given notice about a certain event were less likely to be persuaded than those who had no pre-warning. Reciprocity. Another well-studied explanation for how we might be open to the power of persuasion is the rule of reciprocity. This is based on a principle related to social conventions. If someone does you a favor, or does something good for you, then you are more likely to feel obliged to return the favor. The rule of reciprocity can also happen subconsciously, without even realizing it. You may agree to an action or favor asked of you by the requester, all because at some point they had done something for you, and you feel in their debt. You may feel obliged even if the request is something you would normally decline. It is an effect widely used by companies who are looking to make sales. Often companies give out free samples or time-limited trials. This is not without a motive. It is in the hope that the customer feels obliged to return the favor and buy the product or continue with the agreement. Reciprocity is a recognized psychological process. It is an adaptive behavior which would have increased our chances of survival in the past. By helping others, it is likely that at some later point they will help you, though it can also have negative effects. If someone does something bad to you, then you may be driven by the rules of reciprocity to exact your revenge. The rule of reciprocity is well supported by academic research. Berger et al. 2009 suggested that a group of participants were more likely to agree to a request if the requester had previously done them a favor. Information manipulation. Powerful tool in the manipulator's armory. This is a method of being outright deceitful. It is a means of providing limited and confusing information to the victim. The effect of this will unbalance their way of thinking, making them vulnerable. It can also incorporate the use of intentional body language to persuade and manipulate someone. A study by McCormack et al. 1992 showed the different ways a message can be falsified to assist in the manipulation process. Cormack's theory has a premise of 4 maxims in a truthful statement. A breach of any of these will render the message as intentionally deceitful. The 4 maxims are: quantity, this is the amount of information provided. Most of us seek to provide the right amount of information so that the receiver understands our message, not too little or too much, as that might confuse. A manipulator, though, would play with that quantity of information. They may omit certain pieces they consider irrelevant, most especially if it is likely to work against their argument. This is known as lying by omission. Quality refers to the accuracy of the information provided. Truthful communication is one of high quality. If we were to violate this maxim, then the receiver hears intentional mistruths, that this is outright lying to gain the manipulator power. Relation. Here we talk about the relevance of the information to the message. To confuse or sidestep an awkward question, the manipulator may go off topic. That this is a way of changing the subject for the sole purpose of misleading. It could be to hide their own weaknesses, or even to overemphasize on something that will give them more power over their listener. Anna. The presentation of the message. An important aspect of this is body language. We read inflections and facial expressions as we listen. Manipulator may exaggerate these to mislead the presentation of the message. This is all in the aim to emphasize their own agenda. Lying to manipulate or persuade someone is not a new concept. It is, though, a method that is becoming particularly potent in the modern world. Online communication and social media do not always involve face-to-face contact. This makes it easier to tell mistruths or exaggerate information. A manipulator may in their elements with such communications. Nudge. Not all manipulation is sinister. Sometimes we may be manipulated to help us make the right decisions for our own good. To do this, the nudge theory is particularly useful. The nudge theory expands positive reinforcement by using small nudges. The Skinner studies or behaviorism show how useful this theory can be. With positive reinforcement, such as rewards, it can manipulate people into behaving in the manner that you are hoping to encourage. One example of nudging can be seen in this example. Adding exceptionally high-priced items on a menu may seem counterproductive, yet the result of this actually increased the sales of the second highest-priced item. The customers were given a nudge in the right direction, but for the benefit of the restaurateur. Richard Thaler, considered the father of the nudge theory, was awarded the Nobel Memorial Prize in Economic Sciences. His contribution to behavioral economics was considered quite momentous. Nudge theory gives positive reinforcement, or as Thaler described it, it gives nudges. The nudge theory is not only effective in economics, it can be used to encourage behavioral changes and influencing personal choices. Even accepted social norms can be manipulated to changes. In this way, nudging is so successful that in 2010, the British government set up a Department Behavioral Insights team. This was to help develop policies. The department was referred to as the Nudge Unit. There can be obvious benefits of using nudges to influence people. It is still a form of psychological manipulation that can infringe on an individual's civil liberties. Social manipulation. This type of manipulation is also known as psychological manipulation. It is often a tool for politicians or other groups of powerful people who are used to advancing their own interests. In its worst form, it is a means of social control. By taking away individuality, it coerces the populace into accepting what is given to them. Though it can have a positive side when used to help with personal issues, such as improving health and well-being. Those in power who use social manipulation may use distractive techniques to deflect from important issues. They would argue that their proposals are for the benefit of the populace and the benefit of your family and its future. Anything you think personally that might be different is wrong and selfish. This type of persuasion is very paternalistic, almost treating individuals as if they were all children. This system will strive to make the crowds believe the things that have gone wrong are, in fact, their own fault. The only way to resolve the problem is to listen to the guidance of those who know better. Such a political strategy would bring to forefront one social problem, only to hide another. It is a tactic to cause social unrest and panic among the populace. By creating unease in society, the populace will begin to demand changes. An example could be that the department wishes to hide the problem's health care, so they decrease the budget in crime prevention, causing crime statistics to rocket. The populace will receive information to coerce them into believing the best way forward for the crime problem. The politicians will feed propaganda by disseminating their own truths and facts. It may not always be true, or it may be information that is exaggerated, such as misuse of statistics. This type of social manipulation could take years to get the end result that the manipulator requires. The use of psychological manipulation is all a part of social influence. Professor Preston Nee, Communication Studies, published an article in Psychology Today. He indicates that one party recognizes another's weaknesses. They deliberately set out to cause an imbalance of power. This enables them to exploit their victims for their own agenda. Does this make us all social puppets? To some degree, it does. Most of us comply and conform to what is expected of us to avoid a society of chaos. Think for a moment. What is the latest gadget or home improvement product that you would like to buy? Is it something a friend told you about, or a neighbor owns? Chances are it is something that someone else has, or you've read that it's popular on the internet, and that makes you desire it. This is another side of social manipulation. We can be so easily swayed if we let our guard down. Whether that is a good or bad thing depends on how you personally view it. As mentioned earlier, not all social manipulation is a bad thing. It can have positive aspects. The word manipulation might conjure up thoughts of a villainous individuals bending you to their will. But used correctly, social manipulation can help the populace as a whole. Good examples of social manipulation are the 5-a-day campaigns. Health specialists attempt to convince us to eat more fruit and vegetables, or even the stop smoking campaigns, which have resulted in reduced numbers of smokers, the result of which is a reduction in smoking-related diseases. That this is coercion at its best, gaslighting. This is perhaps the cruelest form of manipulation. It is a means of casting into doubt on the sanity and self-esteem of a person. You could say it is sowing the seeds of doubt into the victim of manipulation, working on a similar principle, such as knowing you are being told repeated lies, until eventually you begin to believe the lies as the truth. It is an unkind form of manipulation. The gaslighter will cause their victim to lose all confidence in their own credibility. This leads to completely destroying their own self-worth, all because they begin to doubt themselves. That is the intention of gaslighting, to reduce the victim to a psychological mess. The manipulator will constantly put their target down by contradicting them, also by convincing them that they are always wrong, sometimes to the point that the victim will be accused of telling lies. This is why the victim loses all self-esteem. When that happens, they become ruled by the domineering influencer. It is a form of mental abuse, often seen in abusive personal relationships. The influencer will use constant techniques to make their victim doubt themselves, even to the point of doubting their own memories, by denying things they've said and done. Gaslighting takes a while before it is fully effective. The manipulator will wear his/her victim down over a long period of time. This type of manipulation is so insidious that it can eventually lead to the victim doubting their own sanity. Dr. George Simon, Doctor of Philosophy, is a clinical psychologist at a Texas university. He has studied people with disturbing personalities. The results of his studies caused him to believe that certain types of personalities, particularly psychopaths, are very adept at manipulation. They will distort the truth and use aggressive language to set the wheels of doubt in motion in their victim's thoughts. Eventually, the target will lose confidence in their own judgment. They may feel shame, and they will come to believe that the manipulator is right. This puts the target under the manipulator's control. Gaslighting is not only restricted to individuals acting on one another. It can be argued that it also has political uses. Columnist and author Maureen Dowd is one to follow this belief. She argued that Clinton's administration used gaslighting techniques against a political opponent. Newt Gingrich, a member of the opposing political party, was often goaded into appearing hysterical. Some journalists and psychologists argue that Donald Trump also used gaslighting techniques, not only during his presidential campaign, but also whilst in office. They argue he frequently says one thing, then denies he ever said it, which is classic gaslighting. Vulnerabilities exploited by manipulators. A manipulator manages to reach his goal by playing on the weak points of his victims. His flair and experience make him choose those who seem to be the least assertive in life, or who are least able to defend themselves. If necessary, he can weaken the resistance of his victims by playing on their fears or their preconceptions. The manipulator first attacks the weak. Observation. The weakness is a more or less momentary situation that often comes from an unfavorable balance of power. This is the case, for example, when one is confronted by a disdainful superior, a representative of the order who notices an offense, or a big threatening man covered with tattoos. The weakness can also come from a deficient physical state related to illness, fatigue, or overwork. Even if it is momentary, this weakness is nonetheless real and perceptible by the manipulator. The weakness can be of psychological origin. Thus, the one who feels inferior, less rich, less intelligent, less beautiful, or less capable than his interlocutor, automatically places himself in a position of inferiority and weakness. A decrease in morale or a depressive state weakens the defenses and exposes him more fully to the attacks of the manipulators. In any case, a state of weakness hinders self-assertion and the ability to defend oneself. This is why we must not let the manipulator take advantage of his superiority, giving him too hastily what he expects. To resist. When one feels weak, the solution is simple. You must not be reactive. It is urgent not to rush or make decisions that you will inevitably regret one day or another. As little as possible must be said or done, and you must avoid making hasty decisions by postponing what the manipulator asks until later. When one feels both manipulated and in a position of weakness, the way to do this is as follows. Begin by making the manipulator understand that his claim has been well understood. Then insist that one is not able to answer, for the moment, its requirements. Finally, finish the conversation as quickly as possible, while remaining polite. I understand that what you're asking me is important to you, but for the moment, I cannot answer it. Thank you. Thank you for thinking of me by making me the offer, but you see I am not able to make a decision. Goodbye. I understand that. Reformulate their request, but I cannot. Excuse me. Then leave as soon as possible. When one feels weak or inferior, one must not flee shamefully. To do so would be an indicator of weakness that shows the manipulator that he can continue to harass us in peace. What is needed is to leave the interaction by operating a strategic retreat based on the following 3 actions: acknowledge receipt, defuse, and stop. Acknowledgement means that we have understood their request. It's a question of being able to formulate it with our words. This reformulation shows without question that we have fully understood what the manipulator has just told us. It does not allow the manipulator to take advantage of our misunderstanding or to insist heavily. The acknowledgement of receipt must be clear enough to indicate to the manipulator that we have understood what he wanted. Diffusing is simply saying, without getting lost in the details, that we are not in a condition or not able to respond to his request. To stop is to quickly and politely interrupt conversation without waiting for other answers. You must intend to stop the conversation without regret or remorse. In a bar, a client tries to seduce the waitress who brings her order. After a few exchanges, he asks her, "What time do you finish tonight? Thank you for looking at my schedules." Acknowledge, "But answering you is not part of my job." Diffuse, "What a pity. Thank you, sir, and goodbye." Stop. A friend, who is a notoriously bad payer, asks you, "I do not know who to ask for money to pay for the repair of my car." "Yes, I understand. This is not a pleasant situation." Acknowledge, "Will pay you back as soon as I have received the money I owe." "Well, in these conditions, I think you'll get out of it." Diffuse, "I hope." Buy, stop. In operating a strategic retreat, sometimes we just put the problem back so that we don't need to deal with it while we may make a poor decision. Remember, we cannot win every time. The strategic retreat at least avoids being manipulated once again. Think of a type A manipulation in which you were in a weak position. Then just imagine how you could have responded by using the 3 stages of strategic retreat. The manipulator prefers liabilities. The observation: passive people represent about 1/3 of the people we meet in life. The manipulator appreciates them enormously because they do not allow themselves to react and do not know how to defend themselves. They are victims of choice for him. He finds them very easily and attacks them directly. Generally, the passive person does not require anything because he is afraid of imposing himself. He prefers to be crushed underfoot rather than to say he is walking on his feet. He may be generous enough not to appear selfish or make disproportionate gifts to redeem imaginary or benign faults. Passives are very discreet people who do not want to disturb. They are shy people who do not speak much or who spend their time apologizing. They are almost unable to refuse what they are asked for fear of appearing insensitive, antisocial, or unsympathetic. It is very difficult for them to talk about themselves and almost impossible to put themselves first. They are often excessively helpful because they are more concerned with the interests of others than with their own needs. The problem with liabilities is that they forget their own existence and prefer to submit, forgetting themselves, rather than face conflict, disagreement, or judgment. Passivity has deep roots that often go back to childhood. This state of affairs won't be easily changed by reading a few lines. However, it is possible to explore a few tracks to help those who tend to behave in this way, to resist, to get out of the state of inferiority and loneliness in which he finds himself. The passive must be able to imagine that he is a human being just like others, and that his opinion and desires are at least as valid as those men and women around him. Basically, all the other people I meet are like me. I am not the only one to suffer. Every man or woman I meet in life has experienced suffering. Everyone runs after happiness and seeks to satisfy his needs. But at the same time, nobody has lived through the same things as me. No one knows what I live deeply, and no one knows exactly how much I suffer. All of these people are different from me, just as I am different from others. My opinions and desires are just as respectable as theirs. There are no superior or inferior people. There are only different people who are all equally respectable. It is common to compare one aspect or detail of one's life with the same detail or the same aspect of another's life. One does not hesitate to say that one person is richer, more competent, more muscular, or more famous than another. We can compare cars or bank accounts, but we cannot compare globally between them. If one evaluates someone in the entirety of their existence, nobody resembles anyone because each experience is different. We all move forward in life with a unique story that determines, to a large extent, the decisions we make at every moment. In these conditions, no one is like anyone, and nobody can compare to anyone. We are as we are, and there is neither shame nor pride in feeling different. We can, and must always, seek to improve, but in the end, we will never be anything but ourselves. To accept others as they are is still the best way to accept oneself. To better understand all that this covers, here is a little exercise that we can do and redo for as long as we are surrounded. Observe a person discreetly while repeating to you this series of sentences. This person is like me. She also knew sorrow, sadness, despair. This person is like me and tries to avoid suffering. This person is like me. She needs to love and be loved. This person is like me and is looking for happiness. This person is like me. There are no two identical people. This person is like me. She is the only one to be who she is. Repeat with different people until you feel a shift in your perception of others or yourself. The manipulator wakes up our fears. The observation. When a manipulator attacks someone who is neither weak nor passive, he still has the opportunity to achieve his goals by playing on the fear experienced by his victim. By playing this type of chord, the manipulator prevents the person from asserting himself and undermines his defenses as well as his ability to resist. One of the uncontrollable fears that make us a designated victim is the fear of being hurt or hurting someone by denying them what they ask for. The manipulator spots wake up and use these kinds of fears to get us to do what he wants without us being able to defend ourselves. The fear of giving oneself a bad image is blackmail that the manipulator also knows how to use. Have you thought of what people will say if you ever do that? The fear of being judged often forces one to act against one's own desire. One is also a victim of manipulation when one is afraid of offending the other. You will not do that to me. You cannot refuse me this service. Listen, do it for me. I understand that you can refuse anyone, but not me. You cannot refuse to do that for your mother. Listen, I'm your friend all the same. Some manipulations are based on the fear of disappointing the other. You know, I really need this money, and I can't count on anyone but you. You cannot disappoint me. It's too serious for me. Blackmail plays on the fear of losing someone. If you do not do this for me, you do not love me. But sometimes it is pride that makes us fall into the trap of manipulation. You know, I could not ask this of just anyone, and I can only really count on you. I know you'll be discreet, won't you? It is very difficult to resist manipulations that play on the heartstrings of esteem, friendship, or love. The feelings we have for the manipulator should not play the role of the tree that hides the forest. It is not what binds us to the manipulator that is important. It is what he asks us or what he forces us to do, to resist, to oppose these different types of egocentric manipulations. Here is the question that must immediately be asked. If someone broke away from me because I did not give in to the blackmail he subjected me to, is that really someone who deserves my affection? On the contrary, is it not, at least for now, a vulgar type, i.e. manipulator, who thinks only of his interest without worrying about mine? The answer is sometimes cruel, and it often takes courage to accept the evidence. Ask yourself the following question. The last time I gave in to this kind of manipulation, was the manipulator worth the price of my sacrifice? The manipulator uses preconceptions. The situation preconceived ideas are what everyone thinks about a situation. They are what is accepted by society, and that no one would think to question. One must be honest, one should not lie, one must be generous. All of these convictions represent an essential pillar of our education, without which life in society would not be possible. The manipulator plays on these beliefs, which always contain some truth, and diverts them to his advantage if we deny him what he asks. He will try to make us feel guilty by saying, "Those who do not know how to share are selfish." A kind grandmother created serious conflicts by saying with great conviction, "In the family, we can say everything." The one who was opposed to her was interrupted by this other idea: "You must respect my white hair." According to their needs and circumstances, the manipulator will use one or another of these ready-made ideas to better enslave us. He can state a certain number of ready-made sentences. It is not easy to refuse when you ask politely. We must always help others. We must always help others. We must know how to be helpful. We must not leave people in need. He may also attempt to impose his will in holding forth. You can never go wrong if. Always keep your word. It is easier to escape problems than to save and unfold, and it is easier to escape problems than. Ready-made ideas are an extraordinary means of pressure, because they impose on us as universal truths that it would be out of place to question. These are truly conditioned reflexes that nobody doubts. And yet, this is what should be done, because no ready-made idea can prove to be accurate at all times and under all circumstances. Remember, thus the expression "he who does not attempt anything has nothing" can encourage someone who is hesitant to become self-employed, or can manipulate someone who is hesitant to take drugs or to do any other stupid activity. To resist, when a manipulator uses a ready-made idea, one must not remain a prisoner of what he assures us with confidence. You have to use common sense and question him, or ask yourself, by asking, "So what?" Then, depending on the answer obtained, the question must be repeated. "So what?" We continue like this until we escape manipulation. You should help me. I am your friend. First idea, ready. And then, with friends, it is normal to help each other. The second idea, ready. "So what?" "I need 1,000 a year. I'm sorry, but I do not have that much money to lend." "What about 500 a year, could you?" "Look, right now I cannot lend money to anyone, and it has nothing to do with friendship." Okay. To overcome personal blockages that temporarily prevent us from resisting or opposing the manipulator, we can use the exercise by questioning ourselves. Someone previously convinced you to help them, and now you cannot do it anymore. I promised to help him. So what? When one commits oneself, one must always keep one's word, and then, now I can't really help them anymore. So what? He will not be happy. So what? After all, it's his problem, and he did not give me the choice. So what? I'll call him to explain the situation. It is not the manipulator who makes us dependent. It is the ready-made ideas that we accept without questioning them. By questioning these ready-made ideas, the technique of "so what" can resist or diffuse a large number of type I manipulations. Machiavellianism, or High Mich, is the master of all manipulators. They don't choose to be that way. They simply are that way. This type of person will go to extremes to gain power. Lying, cheating, stealing, and treachery are nothing to them. If the choice is between doing something moral to eventually meet your goals or stepping on and deceiving people to achieve goals more quickly, they will choose the latter every time. High Miches are calculating. They can be charming, but they will also use guilt and pressure to get what they want. Machiavellians share some traits of narcissists, as such as both share a certain self-centeredness, as well as ambitious in their goals, needs, and wants. Machiavellians can be cold and calculating with their manipulation. Their plans for manipulation can be well thought out and organized, and they also exhibit self-control, unlike narcissists, who can be impulsive and emotional. While narcissists may get jealous or envious when someone else gets ahead, like a promotion, Machiavellians normally would not mind, as long as there was a way for them to get something out of it. Machiavellians show traits like having cold, calculating view of others. Strategy is paramount for Machiavellians. In order to achieve their goals, they are willing to lie, deceive, and cheat without sympathy for others. Lack of emotional attachment. Machiavellian may have people that care about them. They may not feel the same care or love and return the affection honestly. Cold empathy. Ability to understand what others are thinking or react to situations. Machiavellian may use this as a way to calculate their plan. Hot empathy, the ability to understand what others are feeling. A Machiavellian may not be able to resonate with someone on how they would feel after performing a task for them, especially if it is something disagreeable. Bypass empathy. they may have the ability to bypass the consideration of others to achieve their own goals. Some researchers have considered this an evolutionary advantage. Machiavellians may understand the emotions of others. They simply may not care. Behavioral inhibition. Behavioral inhibition refers to avoidance tendencies, such as introversion or withdrawn behavior. Machiavellians participate in this kind of withdrawn behavior while depending on their own intelligence and cunning. To sum it up, narcissists are social, Machiavellians are not. Alexithymia. Alexithymia describes a discrepancy in naming and understanding emotions. Machiavellians display the cold and aloofness that is associated with alexithymia. They are also out of touch with their own experiences with emotions. Organizational psychologists have also studied Machiavellianism, particularly those who study manipulative behaviors in the workplace. About the effects of Machiavellianism, noted psychologist Oliver James wrote about its effects and other dark triad personality traits, psychopathy and narcissism being others. The organization settings in the model of Machiavellianism in the workplace is based on 3 factors: upholding status positions, punitive techniques of supervision in the workplace, manipulative behaviors since lying can be more habitual to them. Persons with Machiavellian characteristics can give honest responses during interviews less likely, while lying is more probable to be seen as a reasonable strategy by psychopaths or narcissists in interviews. High Machiavellian individuals have greater willingness to fabricate information in order to influence the interviewers. Men and women showed Machiavellian tendencies, used different tactics. A research revealed that Machiavellian females offered interviewers more liberty to address the subjects during the interview. Machiavellian males did the reverse, giving less liberty to the individuals conducting the interviews. The study also showed that Machiavellian men, during the job interviews, were more likely going to make up false information about themselves. Machiavellian traits. Thoughts and actions show they may also be prone to bullying in the workplace. Thoughts and actions that Machiavellians perceive and thrive in a workplace are: humility must never be shown with dealing with others. Arrogance is effective. Weakness is shown through having morality and ethics. Lying, cheating, and deceiving others when it suits them is what powerful people do. Being feared is better than being loved. Groups of bullies and bully victims, compared to groups and persons not involved in bullying, had a higher level of Machiavellianism. Results from these studies also showed that being bullied was related to hierarchy culture, as opposed to perceptions of clan and adhocracy cultures. Machiavellianism was associated with abusive supervision of subordinates in the workplace. While narcissists and Machiavellians are widely researched and discussed, there are other kinds of emotional manipulator archetypes. They also share some traits and symptoms of narcissists and Machiavellians. These archetypes are: the expert. This archetype has a strong desire to be the man or the boss. It is important to them that are high in their social status and establish dominance of their group. Though they sometimes lack consciousness of this need, they prefer to be around people with low self-esteem or confidence because it is easier for them to manipulate and are able to identify where people are vulnerable. They are more likely to hide their conceitedness. Getting rid of self-shame and doubts are their goals and are their driving forces. They are more inclined to tease and joke at the other's expense in order to make themselves look better. The triangulator. They are dependent on others and will continue this dependency through lies, distortions, and other forms of manipulation. If someone stands in the way of their goals, they will form and lead alliances and attack them through rumors or other ways. To facilitate bonds, they may employ techniques like seduction or playing the servant role. In reality, they are taking advantage and establishing their position and working on maintaining their connection. This may appear in strong bonded relationships, such as parent-child, or romantic relationships. Powerful dependence. Under the guise of appearing powerless and weak, these manipulators can gain power in whom they can be dependent upon. They can be considered an example of learned helplessness and welcome any praise or gain they can achieve simply by being around their victim. You could call these people fair-weather friends. Much like the triangulator archetype, they can seduce with compliments and flattery, as well as appear weak and inferior, in order to be underestimated by the victim, in order to establish subtle manipulative dominance. If they are unsuccessful in their manipulation, they will try to guilt-trip their victim. The blasters, much like narcissists, people with this archetype are keen to use outbursts and brandish anger to divert and deflect as a way to avoid issues that need to be addressed. A blaster is often suspected by a victim because they most likely are doing something in secret that they shouldn't be doing, such as stealing from the office or incurring credit card debt, maybe even having an affair. When confronted with the behavior, they will try to deflect or derail the victim with being overly defensive and say things like, "You are being paranoid," or "I can't believe you don't trust me." They may also want to blame or vilify the victim as well. They are prone to resist change and will avoid taking responsibility for their actions by deflecting or being in denial. They will make threats, scream and yell at people who call them out on their actions. The projector, their egos are very precious to them, so they defend their egos with denial, diversion, or shift blame to others. They have poor self-insight and they will never take responsibility for their own actions. When their character or actions are in question, they will go on the defensive. The primary aspect of a projector is to put their blame on their own flaws onto others. The projector views life as though they are looking through a window, when in reality it is really a mirror. They are usually oblivious or unconscious about this. Some examples of this are: you are racist when they are racist. You're being controlling when they are controlling. They may try to get people to join their side and aid them, much like triangulator, but not necessarily out of spite or harm, but in order to avoid and deflect accountability. They strive to avoid looking in the mirror and see their flaws at any cost, so they never give up and are relentless. They will trash and accuse you if you don't give them what they want. They truly believe their bad faults are your bad faults. They hate themselves, but they feel excessive hatred towards others. They can justify their own behaviors by blaming and judging others. The intimidator, this manipulation archetype, much like the blaster, uses bullying and intimidation. Instead of feigning anger as a means to divert, they use it as a means of intimidation to get what they want. From taking a threatening posture to actual physical aggression, those with the intimidator will use their own physical presence as a means of intimidation. Some may even use their intelligence as part of their intimidating nature. If those do not give them what they want, they will go out of their way to completely destroy them. Since they believe they are superior to everyone, they are surprised when someone disagrees with them. They believe in bending and moving things to their will through will. To them, other people are pawns in their game. They can manipulate and get what they want out of others. The intimidator will act aggressively if their victims are not doing what they want them to do. They feel that it is their right to manipulate their lesser. The flirt, they use seduction techniques and behaviors to attract people who can best achieve their goals. They believe that they are attractive and believe everyone else thinks so too, even if they are not. Like narcissists and Machiavellians, they are the most important person in the room. They strive to be everyone's favorite person. They may even use sex as a way to manipulate and achieve their goals or gain attention. They seem to enjoy causing drama among their friends and family members. They may even brag about the damage they cause. They like to stay connected with past loves while looking for new ones. All of us at one point in our lives have used 1, 2, 3 or more traits of what manipulative archetypes do, whether we knew it or not. All of the manipulative actions used by those with manipulative traits worked best when the intended victim was not aware of the actual manipulation taking place. Probably because manipulation is subtle, the term can sometimes get a negative reputation. Subtle manipulation is used in our daily lives all of the time. Advertising uses subtle manipulation to sell products. They can use aspects of seduction, like flattery, using phrases like, "You are a good mom," "All good moms like to," or use relatable imagery that the intended audience can see and say, "This person looks like me," or "If I don't buy this, I won't be like them." This can make the prospective customer the advertisement is aiming for to consider purchasing. In television ads, they may introduce the audience to new experiences that the audience may not have done yet, such as skiing down a hill in Switzerland or loading a flatbed pickup on a farm. They put the audience in these situations, so they unconsciously want to mimic these experiences and may want to buy the product. Advertisers also like to try and capture our attention through our curiosity. When we click on an article online, we are attracted to articles that pique our curiosity. They may have headlines like "Remember these 20 things from the 90s. When we click on articles like this, we are gratifying our curiosity gap. There is a downside to this approach. If our curiosity is not piqued, we will never visit that site again. We are naturally drawn to the right side of things, maybe because people are predominantly right-handed. Advertising uses this knowledge. They put items that they want to sell us in the right hands of models. This goes further than just items being put in the right hand. We perceive the right side as the right side. It can be seen as trustworthy. This is why Google and Facebook post their ads on the right side column. There is a manipulative pricing strategy where raising the price of something doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is better. Increasing the price can actually make people go for it more. In a research study, people at a restaurant were given a buffet but were charged at random either $8 for the buffet or $4 for the buffet. Those who paid for the $8 buffet were more likely to express satisfaction with their meal than the ones who paid for $4. By branding products as exclusive or premium for a better experience, a customer will always perceive the higher-priced product as better. Our striving and yearning for contentment is a part of our makeup as human beings. Sometimes we want more than our basic levels to help make us feel whole. Machiavellianism, or High Mish, is the master of all manipulators. They don't choose to be that way. They simply are that way. This type of person will go to extremes to gain power. Lying, cheating, stealing, and treachery are nothing to them. If the choice is between doing something moral to eventually meet your goals or stepping on and deceiving people to achieve goals more quickly, they will choose the latter every time. High Mishes are calculating. They can be charming, but they will also use guilt and pressure to get what they want. Machiavellians share some traits of narcissists, such as both share a certain self-centeredness, as well as ambitious in their goals, needs, and wants. Machiavellians can be cold and calculating with their manipulation. Their plans for manipulation can be well thought out and organized, and they also exhibit self-control, unlike narcissists, who can be impulsive and emotional. While narcissists may get jealous or envious when someone else gets ahead, like a promotion, Machiavellians normally would not mind, as long as there was a way for them to get something out of it. Machiavellians show traits like having cold, calculating view of others. Strategy is paramount for Machiavellians. In order to achieve their goals, they are willing to lie, deceive, and cheat without sympathy for others. Lack of emotional attachment. Machiavellian may have people that care about them. They may not feel the same care or love and return the affection honestly. Cold empathy. Ability to understand what others are thinking or react to situations. Machiavellian may use this as a way to calculate their plan. Hot empathy. The ability to understand what others are feeling. A Machiavellian may not be able to resonate with someone on how they would feel after performing a task for them, especially if it is something disagreeable. Bypass empathy. They may have the ability to bypass the consideration of others to achieve their own goals. Some researchers have considered this an evolutionary advantage. Machiavellians may understand the emotions of others. They simply may not care. Behavioral inhibition. Behavioral inhibition refers to avoidance tendencies, such as introversion or withdrawn behavior. Machiavellians participate in this kind of withdrawn behavior while depending on their own intelligence and cunning. To sum it up, narcissists are social, Machiavellians are not. Alexithymia. Alexithymia describes a discrepancy in naming and understanding emotions. Machiavellians display the cold and aloofness that is associated with alexithymia. They are also out of touch with their own experiences with emotions. Organizational psychologists have also studied Machiavellianism, particularly those who study manipulative behaviors in the workplace. About the effects of Machiavellianism, noted psychologist Oliver James wrote about its effects and other dark triad personalities personality traits, psychopathy and narcissism being others. The organization settings in the model of Machiavellianism in the workplace is based on three factors: upholding status positions, punitive techniques of supervision in the workplace, manipulative behaviors since lying can be more habitual to them. Persons with Machiavellian characteristics can give honest responses during interviews less likely, while lying is more probable to be seen as a reasonable strategy by psychopaths or narcissists in interviews. High Machiavellian individuals have greater willingness to fabricate information in order to influence the interviewers. Men and women showed Machiavellian tendencies, used different tactics. A research revealed that Machiavellian females offered interviewers more liberty to address the subjects during the interview. Machiavellian males did the reverse, giving less liberty to the individuals conducting the interviews. The study also showed that Machiavellian men, during the job interviews, were more likely going to make up false information about themselves. Machiavellian traits. Thoughts and actions show they may also be prone to bullying in the workplace. Thoughts and actions that Machiavellians perceive and thrive in a workplace are: humility must never be shown with dealing with others. Arrogance is effective. Weakness is shown through having morality and ethics. Lying, cheating, and deceiving others when it suits them is what powerful people do. Being feared is better than being loved. Groups of bullies and bully victims, compared to groups and persons non-involved in bullying, had a higher level of Machiavellianism. Results from these studies also showed that being bullied was related to hierarchy culture, as opposed to perceptions of clan and adhocracy cultures. Machiavellianism was associated with abusive supervision of subordinates in the workplace. While narcissists and Machiavellians are widely researched and discussed, there are other kinds of emotional manipulator archetypes. They also share some traits and symptoms of narcissists and Machiavellians. These archetypes are: the expert. This archetype has a strong desire to be the man or the boss. It is important to them that are high in their social status and establish dominance of their group. Though they sometimes lack consciousness of this need, they prefer to be around people with low self-esteem or confidence because it is easier for them to manipulate and are able to identify where people are vulnerable. They are more likely to hide their conceitedness. Getting rid of self-shame and doubts are their goals and are their driving forces. They are more inclined to tease and joke at the other's expense in order to make themselves look better. The triangulator. They are dependent on others and will continue this dependency through lies, distortions, and other forms of manipulation. If someone stands in the way of their goals, they will form and lead alliances and attack them through rumors or other ways. To facilitate bonds, they may employ techniques like seduction or playing the servant role. In reality, they are taking advantage and establishing their position and working on maintaining their connection. This may appear in strong bonded relationships such as parent, child, or romantic relationships. Powerful dependence. Under the guise of appearing powerless and weak, these manipulators can gain power in whom they can be dependent upon. They can be considered an example of learned helplessness and welcome any praise or gain they can achieve simply by being around their victim. You could call these people fair-weather friends. Much like the triangulator archetype, they can seduce with compliments and flattery, as well as appear weak and inferior in order to be underestimated by the victim, in order to establish subtle manipulative dominance. If they are unsuccessful in their manipulation, they will try to guilt-trip their victim. The blasters. Much like narcissists, people with this archetype are keen to use outbursts and brandish anger to divert and deflect as a way to avoid issues that need to be addressed. A blaster is often suspected by a victim because they most likely are doing something in secret that they shouldn't be doing, such as stealing from the office or incurring credit card debt, maybe even having an affair. When confronted with the behavior, they will try to deflect or derail the victim with being overly defensive and say things like, "You are being paranoid," or "I can't believe you don't trust me." They may also want to blame or vilify the victim as well. They are prone to resist change and will avoid taking responsibility for their actions by deflecting or being in denial. They will make threats, scream and yell at people who call them out on their actions. The projector. Their egos are very precious to them, so they defend their egos with denial, diversion, or shift blame to others. They have poor self-insight and they will never take responsibility for their own actions. When their character or actions are in question, they will go on the defensive. The primary aspect of a projector is to put their blame on their own flaws onto others. The projector views life as though they are looking through a window, when in reality it is really a mirror. They are usually oblivious or unconscious about this. As some examples of this are, you are racist when they are racist. You're being controlling when they are controlling. They may try to get people to join their side and aid them, much like Triangulator, but not necessarily out of spite or harm, but in order to avoid and deflect accountability. They strive to avoid looking in the mirror and see their flaws at any cost, so they never give up and are relentless. They will trash and accuse you if you don't give them what they want. They truly believe their bad faults are your bad faults. They hate themselves, but they feel excessive hatred towards others. They can justify their own behaviors by blaming and judging others. The Intimidator, this manipulation archetype, much like the blaster, uses bullying and intimidation. Instead of feigning anger as a means to divert, they use it as a means of intimidation to get what they want. From taking a threatening posture to actual physical aggression, those with the Intimidator will use their own physical presence as a means of intimidation. Some may even use their intelligence as part of their intimidating nature. If those do not give them what they want, they will go out of their way to completely destroy them. Since they believe they are superior to everyone, they are surprised when someone disagrees with them. They believe in bending and moving things to their will through will. To them, other people are pawns in their game. They can manipulate and get what they want out of others. The Intimidator will act aggressively if their victims are not doing what they want them to do. They feel that it is their right to manipulate their lesser. The Flirt. They use seduction techniques and behaviors to attract people who can best achieve their goals. They believe that they are attractive and believe everyone else thinks so too, even if they are not. Like narcissists and Machiavellians, they are the most important person in the room. They strive to be everyone's favorite person. They may even use sex as a way to manipulate and achieve their goals or gain attention. They seem to enjoy causing drama among their friends and family members. They may even brag about the damage they cause. They like to stay connected with past loves while looking for new ones. All of us at one point in our lives have used 1, 2, 3 or more traits of what manipulative archetypes do, whether we knew it or not. All of the manipulative actions used by those with manipulative traits worked best when the intended victim was not aware of the actual manipulation taking place. Probably because manipulation is subtle, the term can sometimes get a negative reputation. Subtle manipulation is used in our daily lives all of the time. Advertising uses subtle manipulation to sell products. They can use aspects of seduction, like flattery, using phrases like, "You are a good mom," "All good moms like to," or use relatable imagery that the intended audience can see and say, "This person looks like me," or "If I don't buy this, I won't be like them." This can make the prospective customer the advertisement is aiming for to consider purchasing. In television ads, they may introduce the audience to new experiences that the audience may not have done yet, such as skiing down a hill in Switzerland or loading a flatbed pickup on a farm. They put the audience in these situations, so they unconsciously want to mimic these experiences and may want to buy the product. Advertisers also like to try and capture our attention through our curiosity. When we click on an article online, we are attracted to articles that pique our curiosity. They may have headlines like, "Remember these 20 things from the 90s. When we click on articles like this, we are gratifying our curiosity gap. There is a downside to this approach. If our curiosity is not piqued, we will never visit that site again. We are naturally drawn to the right side of things, maybe because people are predominantly right-handed. Advertising uses this knowledge. They put items that they want to sell us in the right hands of models. This goes further than just items being put in the right hand. We perceive the right side as the right side. It can be seen as trustworthy. This is why Google and Facebook post their ads on the right side column. There is a manipulative pricing strategy where raising the price of something doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is better. Increasing the price can actually make people go for it more. In a research study, people at a restaurant were given a buffet but were charged at random either $8 for the buffet or $4 for the buffet. Those who paid for the $8 buffet were more likely to express satisfaction with their meal than the ones who paid for $4. By branding products as exclusive or premium for a better experience. A customer will always perceive the higher-priced product as better. Our striving and yearning for contentment is a part of our makeup as human beings. Sometimes we want more than our basic levels to help make us feel whole. Machiavellianism, or Heimisch, is the master of all manipulators. They don't choose to be that way. They simply are that way. This type of person will go to extremes to gain power. Lying, cheating, stealing, and treachery are nothing to them. If the choice is between doing something moral to eventually meet your goals or stepping on and deceiving people to achieve goals more quickly, they will choose the latter every time. High maches are calculating. They can be charming, but they will also use guilt and pressure to get what they want. Machiavellians share some traits of narcissists, as such as both share a certain self-centeredness, as well as ambitious in their goals, needs, and wants. Machiavellians can be cold and calculating with their manipulation. Their plans for manipulation can be well thought out and organized, and they also exhibit self-control, unlike narcissists, who can be impulsive and emotional. While narcissists may get jealous or envious when someone else gets ahead, like a promotion, Machiavellians normally would not mind, as long as there was a way for them to get something out of it. Machiavellians show traits like having cold, calculating view of others. Strategy is paramount for Machiavellians. In order to achieve their goals, they are willing to lie, deceive, and cheat without sympathy for others. Lack of emotional attachment. Machiavellian may have people that care about them. They may not feel the same care or love and return the affection honestly. Cold empathy. Ability to understand what others are thinking or react to situations. Machiavellian may use this as a way to calculate their plan. Hot empathy, the ability to understand what others are feeling. A Machiavellian may not be able to resonate with someone on how they would feel after performing a task for them, especially if it is something disagreeable. Bypass empathy. They may have the ability to bypass the consideration of others to achieve their own goals. Some researchers have considered this an evolutionary advantage. Machiavellians may understand the emotions of others. They simply may not care. Behavioral inhibition. Behavioral inhibition refers to avoidance tendencies, such as introversion or withdrawn behavior. Machiavellians participate in this kind of withdrawn behavior while depending on their own intelligence and cunning. To sum it up, narcissists are social, Machiavellians are not. Alexithymia. Alexithymia describes a discrepancy in naming and understanding emotions. Machiavellians display the cold and aloofness that is associated with alexithymia. They are also out of touch with their own experiences with emotions. Organizational psychologists have also studied Machiavellianism, particularly those who study manipulative behaviors in the workplace. About the effects of Machiavellianism, noted psychologist Oliver James wrote about its effects and other dark triad personality traits, psychopathy and narcissism being others. The organization settings in the model of Machiavellianism in the workplace is based on three factors: upholding status positions, punitive techniques of supervision in the workplace, manipulative behaviors since lying can be more habitual to them. Persons with Machiavellian characteristics can give honest responses during interviews less likely, while lying is more probable to be seen as a reasonable strategy by psychopaths or narcissists in interviews. High Machiavellian individuals have greater willingness to fabricate information in order to influence the interviewers. Men and women showed Machiavellian tendencies, used different tactics. A research revealed that Machiavellian females offered interviewers more liberty to address the subjects during the interview. Machiavellian males did the reverse, giving less liberty to the individuals conducting the interviews. The study also showed that Machiavellian men, during the job interviews, were more likely going to make up false information about themselves. Machiavellian traits. Thoughts and actions show they may also be prone to bullying in the workplace. Thoughts and actions that Machiavellians perceive and thrive in a workplace are: humility must never be shown with dealing with others. Arrogance is effective. Weakness is shown through having morality and ethics. Lying, cheating, and deceiving others when it suits them is what powerful people do. Being feared is better than being loved. Groups of bullies and bully victims compared to groups and persons non-involved in bullying. had a higher level of Machiavellianism. Results from these studies also showed that being bullied was related to hierarchy culture, as opposed to perceptions of clan and adhocracy cultures. Machiavellianism was associated with abusive supervision of subordinates in the workplace. While narcissists and Machiavellians are widely researched and discussed, there are other kinds of emotional manipulator archetypes. They also share some traits and symptoms of narcissists and Machiavellians. These archetypes are the expert. This archetype has a strong desire to be the man or the boss. It is important to them that are high in their social status and establish dominance of their group. Though they sometimes lack consciousness of this need, they prefer to be around people with low self-esteem or confidence because it is easier for them to manipulate and are able to identify where people are vulnerable. They are more likely to hide their conceitedness. Getting rid of self-shame and doubts are their goals and are their driving forces. They are more inclined to tease and joke at the other's expense in order to make themselves look better. The triangulator, they are dependent on others and will continue this dependency through lies, distortions, and other forms of manipulation. If someone stands in the way of their goals, they will form and lead alliances and attack them through rumors or other ways. To facilitate bonds, they may employ techniques like seduction or playing the servant role. In reality, they are taking advantage and establishing their position and working on maintaining their connection. This may appear in strong bonded relationships, such as parent-child, or romantic relationships. Powerful dependence. Under the guise of appearing powerless and weak, these manipulators can gain power in whom they can be dependent upon. They can be considered an example of learned helplessness and welcome any praise or gain they can achieve simply by being around their victim. You could call these people fair-weather friends. Much like the triangulator archetype, they can seduce with compliments and flattery, as well as appear weak and inferior in order to be underestimated by the victim in order to establish subtle manipulative dominance. If they are unsuccessful in their manipulation, they will try to guilt-trip their victim. The blasters, much like narcissists, people with this archetype are keen to use outbursts and brandish anger to divert and deflect as a way to avoid issues that need to be addressed. A blaster is often suspected by a victim because they most likely are doing something in secret that they shouldn't be doing, such as stealing from the office or incurring credit card debt, maybe even having an affair. When confronted with the behavior, they will try to deflect or derail the victim with being overly defensive and say things like "you are being paranoid" or "I can't believe you don't trust me." They may also want to blame or vilify the victim as well. They are prone to resist change and will avoid taking responsibility for their actions by deflecting or being in denial. They will make threats, scream and yell at people who call them out on their actions. The projector, their egos are very precious to them, so they defend their egos with denial, diversion, or shift blame to others. They have poor self-insight and they will never take responsibility for their own actions. When their character or actions are in question, they will go on the defensive. The primary aspect of a projector is to put their blame on their own flaws onto others. The projector views life as though they are looking through a window, when in reality, it is really a mirror. They are usually oblivious or unconscious about this. As some examples of this are, you are racist when they are racist. You're being controlling when they are controlling. They may try to get people to join their side and aid them, much like triangulator, but not necessarily out of spite or harm, but in order to avoid and deflect accountability. They strive to avoid looking in the mirror and see their flaws at any cost, so they never give up and are relentless. They will trash and accuse you if you don't give them what they want. They truly believe their bad faults are your bad faults. They hate themselves, but they feel excessive hatred towards others. They can justify their own behaviors by blaming and judging others. The intimidator, this manipulation archetype, much like the blaster, uses bullying and intimidation. Instead of feigning anger as a means to divert, they use it as a means of intimidation to get what they want. From taking a threatening posture to actual physical aggression, those with the intimidator will use their own physical presence as a means of intimidation. Some may even use their intelligence as part of their intimidating nature. If those do not give them what they want, they will go out of their way to completely destroy them. Since they believe they are superior to everyone, they are surprised when someone disagrees with them. They believe in bending and moving things to their will through will. To them, other people are pawns in their game. They can manipulate and get what they want out of others. The intimidator will act aggressively if their victims are not doing what they want them to do. They feel that it is their right to manipulate their lesser. The flirt. They use seduction techniques and behaviors to attract people who can best achieve their goals. They believe that they are attractive and believe everyone else thinks so too, even if they are not. Like narcissists and Machiavellians, they are the most important person in the room. They strive to be everyone's favorite person. They may even use sex as a way to manipulate and achieve their goals or gain attention. They seem to enjoy causing drama among their friends and family members. They may even brag about the damage they cause. They like to stay connected with past loves while looking for new ones. All of us at one point in our lives have used 1, 2, 3 or more traits of what manipulative archetypes do, whether we knew it or not. All of the manipulative actions used by those with manipulative traits worked best when the intended victim was not aware of the actual manipulation taking place. Probably because manipulation is subtle, the term can sometimes get a negative reputation. Subtle manipulation is used in our daily lives all of the time. Advertising uses subtle manipulation to sell products. They can use aspects of seduction, like flattery, using phrases like, "You are a good mom," "All good moms like to," or use relatable imagery that the intended audience can see and say, "This person looks like me," or "If I don't buy this, I won't be like them." This can make the prospective customer the advertisement is aiming for to consider purchasing. In television ads, they may introduce the audience to new experiences that the audience may not have done yet, such as skiing down a hill in Switzerland or loading a flatbed pickup on a farm. They put the audience in these situations, so they unconsciously want to mimic these experiences and may want to buy the product. Advertisers also like to try and capture our attention through our curiosity. When we click on an article online, we are attracted to articles that pique our curiosity. They may have headlines like "Remember these 20 things from the 90s. When we click on articles like this, we are gratifying our curiosity gap. There is a downside to this approach. If our curiosity is not piqued, we will never visit that site again. We are naturally drawn to the right side of things, maybe because people are predominantly right-handed. Advertising uses this knowledge. They put items that they want to sell us in the right hands of models. This goes further than just items being put in the right hand. We perceive the right side as the right side. It can be seen as trustworthy. This is why Google and Facebook post their ads on the right side column. There is a manipulative pricing strategy where raising the price of something doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is better. Increasing the price can actually make people go for it more. In a research study, people at a restaurant were given a buffet but were charged at random either $8 for the buffet or $4 for the buffet. Those who paid for the $8 buffet were more likely to express satisfaction with their meal than the ones who paid for $4. By branding products as exclusive or premium for a better experience, a customer will always perceive the higher-priced product as better. Our striving and yearning for contentment is a part of our makeup as human beings. Sometimes we want more than our basic levels to help make us feel whole. Machiavellianism, or High Mish, is the master of all manipulators. They don't choose to be that way. They simply are that way. This type of person will go to extremes to gain power. Lying, cheating, stealing, and treachery are nothing to them. If the choice is between doing something moral to eventually meet your goals or stepping on and deceiving people to achieve goals more quickly, they will choose the latter every time. High Mishes are calculating. They can be charming, but they will also use guilt and pressure to get what they want. Machiavellians share some traits of narcissists, such as both share a certain self-centeredness, as well as ambitious in their goals, needs, and wants. Machiavellians can be cold and calculating with their manipulation. Their plans for manipulation can be well thought out and organized, and they also exhibit self-control. Unlike narcissists, who can be impulsive and emotional. While narcissists may get jealous or envious when someone else gets ahead, like a promotion, Machiavellians normally would not mind, as long as there was a way for them to get something out of it. Machiavellians showed traits like having cold, calculating view of others. Strategy is paramount for Machiavellians. In order to achieve their goals, they are willing to lie, deceive and cheat without sympathy for others. Lack of emotional attachment. Machiavellian may have people that care about them. They may not feel the same care or love and return the affection honestly. Cold empathy. Ability to understand what others are thinking or react to situations. Machiavellian may use this as a way to calculate their plan. Hot empathy, the ability to understand what others are feeling. A Machiavellian may not be able to resonate with someone on how they would feel after performing a task for them, especially if it is something disagreeable. Bypass empathy. They may have the ability to bypass the consideration of others to achieve their own goals. Some researchers have considered this an evolutionary advantage. Machiavellians may understand the emotions of others. They simply may not care. Behavioral inhibition. Behavioral inhibition refers to avoidance tendencies, such as introversion or withdrawn behavior. Machiavellians participate in this kind of withdrawn behavior while depending on their own intelligence and cunning. To sum it up, narcissists are social, Machiavellians are not. Alexithymia. Alexithymia describes a discrepancy in naming and understanding emotions. Machiavellians display the cold and aloofness that is associated with alexithymia. They are also out of touch with their own experiences with emotions. Organizational psychologists have also studied Machiavellianism, particularly those who study manipulative behaviors in the workplace. About the effects of Machiavellianism, noted psychologist Oliver James wrote about its effects and other dark triad personality traits, psychopathy and narcissism being others. The organization settings in the model of Machiavellianism in the workplace is based on 3 factors: upholding status positions, punitive techniques of supervision in the workplace, manipulative behaviors since lying can be more habitual to them. Persons with Machiavellian characteristics can give honest responses during interviews less likely, while lying is more probable to be seen as a reasonable strategy by psychopaths or narcissists in interviews. High Machiavellian individuals have greater willingness to fabricate information in order to influence the interviewers. Men and women showed Machiavellian tendencies, used different tactics. A research revealed that Machiavellian females offered interviewers more liberty to address the subjects during the interview. Machiavellian males did the reverse, giving less liberty to the individuals conducting the interviews. The study also showed that Machiavellian men, during the job interviews, were more likely going to make up false information about themselves. Machiavellian traits. Thoughts and actions show that they may also be prone to bullying in the workplace. Thoughts and actions that Machiavellians perceive and thrive in a workplace are: humility must never be shown with dealing with others. Arrogance is effective. Weakness is shown through having morality and ethics. Lying, cheating, and deceiving others when it suits them is what powerful people do. Being feared is better than being loved. Groups of bullies and bully victims, compared to groups and persons non-involved in bullying, had a higher level of Machiavellianism. Results from these studies also showed that being bullied was related to hierarchy culture, as opposed to perceptions of clan and adhocracy cultures. Machiavellianism was associated with abusive supervision of subordinates in the workplace. While narcissists and Machiavellians are widely researched and discussed, there are other kinds of emotional manipulator archetypes. They also share some traits and symptoms of narcissists and Machiavellians. These archetypes are: the expert. This archetype has a strong desire to be the man or the boss. It is important to them that are high in their social status and establish dominance of their group. Though they sometimes lack consciousness of this need, they prefer to be around people with low self-esteem or confidence because it is easier for them to manipulate and are able to identify where people are vulnerable. They are more likely to hide their conceitedness. Getting rid of self-shame and doubts are their goals and are their driving forces. They are more inclined to tease and joke at the other's expense in order to make themselves look better. The triangulator. They are dependent on others and will continue this dependency through lies, distortions, and other forms of manipulation. If someone stands in the way of their goals, they will form and lead alliances and attack them through rumors or other ways. To facilitate bonds, they may employ techniques like seduction or playing the servant role. In reality, they are taking advantage and establishing their position and working on maintaining their connection. This may appear in strong bonded relationships such as parent, child, or romantic relationships. Powerful dependence. Under the guise of appearing powerless and weak, these manipulators can gain power in whom they can be dependent upon. They can be considered an example of learned helplessness and welcome any praise or gain they can achieve simply by being around their victim. You could call these people fair-weather friends. Much like the triangulator archetype, they can seduce with compliments and flattery, as well as appear weak and inferior in order to be underestimated by the victim, in order to establish subtle manipulative dominance. If they are unsuccessful in their manipulation, they will try to guilt-trip their victim. The blasters, much like narcissists. People with this archetype are keen to use outbursts and brandish anger to divert and deflect as a way to avoid issues that need to be addressed. A blaster is often suspected by a victim because they most likely are doing something in secret that they shouldn't be doing, such as stealing from the office or incurring credit card debt, maybe even having an affair. When confronted with the behavior, they will try to deflect or derail the victim with being overly defensive and say things like, "You are being paranoid," or "I can't believe you don't trust me." They may also want to blame or vilify the victim as well. They are prone to resist change and will avoid taking responsibility for their actions by deflecting or being in denial. They will make threats, scream and yell at people who call them out on their actions. The projector, their egos are very precious to them, so they defend their egos with denial, diversion, or shift blame to others. They have poor self-insight and they will never take responsibility for their own actions. When their character or actions are in question, they will go on the defensive. The primary aspect of a projector is to put their blame on their own flaws onto others. The projector views life as though they are looking through a window, when in reality it is really a mirror. They are usually oblivious or unconscious about this. As some examples of this are, you are racist when they are racist. You're being controlling when they are controlling. They may try to get people to join their side and aid them, much like triangulator, but not necessarily out of spite or harm, but in order to avoid and deflect accountability. They strive to avoid looking in the mirror and see their flaws at any cost, so they never give up and are relentless. They will trash and accuse you if you don't give them what they want. They truly believe their bad faults are your bad faults. They hate themselves, but they feel excessive hatred towards others. They can justify their own behaviors by blaming and judging others. The intimidator, this manipulation archetype, much like the blaster, uses bullying and intimidation. Instead of feigning anger as a means to divert, they use it as a means of intimidation to get what they want. From taking a threatening posture to actual physical aggression, those with the intimidator will use their own physical presence as a means of intimidation. Some may even use their intelligence as part of their intimidating nature. If those do not give them what they want, they will go out of their way to completely destroy them. Since they believe they are superior to everyone, they are surprised when someone disagrees with them. They believe in bending and moving things to their will through will. To them, other people are pawns in their game. They can manipulate and get what they want out of others. The intimidator will act aggressively if their victims are not doing what they want them to do. They feel that it is their right to manipulate their lesser. The flirt. They use seduction techniques and behaviors to attract people who can best achieve their goals. They believe that they are attractive and believe everyone else thinks so too, even if they are not. Like narcissists and Machiavellians, they are the most important person in the room. They strive to be everyone's favorite person. They may even use sex as a way to manipulate and achieve their goals or gain attention. They seem to enjoy causing drama among their friends and family members. They may even brag about the damage they cause. They like to stay connected with past loves while looking for new ones. All of us at one point in our lives have used one 2, 3 or more traits of what manipulative archetypes do, whether we knew it or not. All of the manipulative actions used by those with manipulative traits worked best when the intended victim was not aware of the actual manipulation taking place. Probably because manipulation is subtle, the term can sometimes get a negative reputation. Subtle manipulation is used in our daily lives all of the time. Advertising uses subtle manipulation to sell products. They can use aspects of seduction, like flattery, using phrases like, "You are a good mom," "All good moms like to," or use relatable imagery that the intended audience can see and say, "This person looks like me," or "If I don't buy this, I won't be like them." This can make the prospective customer the advertisement is aiming for to consider purchasing. In television ads, they may introduce the audience to new experiences that the audience may not have done yet, such as skiing down a hill in Switzerland or loading a flatbed pickup on a farm. They put the audience in these situations, so they unconsciously want to mimic these experiences and may want to buy the product. Advertisers also like to try and capture our attention through our curiosity. When we click on an article online, we are attracted to articles that pique our curiosity. They may have headlines like, "Remember these 20 things from the 90s. When we click on articles like this, we are gratifying our curiosity gap. There is a downside to this approach. If our curiosity is not piqued, we will never visit that site again. We are naturally drawn to the right side of things, maybe because people are predominantly right-handed. Advertising uses this knowledge. They put items that they want to sell us in the right hands of models. This goes further than just items being put in the right hand. We perceive the right side as the right side. It can be seen as trustworthy. This is why Google and Facebook post their ads on the right side column. There is a manipulative pricing strategy where raising the price of something doesn't necessarily mean that the quality is better. Increasing the price can actually make people go for it more. In a research study, people at a restaurant were given a buffet but were charged at random either $8 for the buffet or $4 for the buffet. Those who paid for the $8 buffet were more likely to express satisfaction with their meal than the ones who paid for $4. By branding products as exclusive or premium for a better experience, a customer will always perceive the higher priced product as better. Our striving and yearning for contentment is a part of our makeup as human beings. Sometimes we want more than our basic levels to help make us feel whole. Dark psychology techniques explained in this book. Emotional manipulation theories on successful manipulation. Covert emotional manipulation is very important to the art of dark psychology. Many of the tactics that are used with dark psychology are going to use this type of emotional manipulation, whether in part or completely. As you start to learn a bit more about the world of dark psychology and its different manifestations, you will soon start to see the signs of ECM. This is why it is so important to understand what CEM is exactly, so that you can watch out for it in your daily life. Covert emotional manipulation, or CEM, is going to be an attempt by one person to try and influence the feelings and the thoughts of the other person in a way that is considered underhanded and that is undetected by the one who is being manipulated. Being able to break down each of the words that are in CEM is important to help you get a better idea on the foundations of this topic. Covert refers to the way that a manipulator is able to hide their intentions. They want to be able to hide the true nature of all their actions. Remember that not all types of influence and emotional manipulation will be categorized as covert. The victims of the type that is covert, though, will typically not realize they are being manipulated and will not be able to understand the way the manipulation is carried out. In some cases, they are not even able to look and figure out the motivation of their manipulator. This is why CEM is such a stealth bomber in the world of dark psychology. Its point is to avoid detection and defense until it is too late for the victim. The emotional side of the manipulator is going to be the specific focus of that manipulator. Other types of manipulation may include things like the willpower, beliefs, and behaviors of the other person. Any manipulators will focus on this area of influence, as they are well aware that the emotions of the other person are key to the other aspects of their personality. Being able to manipulate the emotions of the other person is key. If a person has emotional control over the other person, then they are going to have full control over them. The final piece of CAM is manipulation. It is commonly thought that manipulation and influence are the same things. This is not true, though. Manipulation is going to refer to the hidden and underhand process of influence that will take place outside the awareness of the one who is being controlled. The intention behind this, compared to someone who has the intention to influence, can be a big difference. With an influencer, they are going to go into this with the idea of, I want to help you make a decision that is good for you. But with the manipulator, they have the thoughts of, I want to secretly control you in order to provide benefit to myself. As you can see, both of these are quite a bit different. So understanding the intention behind any given behavior is going to be a large part in deciding whether the situation is covert emotional manipulation or not. Situation and manipulations. There are 4 main scenarios in which CEM is able to take place. These include the family, romantic, personal, and professional parts of your life. One of the most common forms of CEM is romantic, and it can sometimes be the deadliest. There are some less obvious forms of CEM that you are able to find anywhere, and because they are less common, they can sometimes be the most dangerous. Good example of CEM is a controlling romantic partner. If a woman is in a relationship and her partner is trying to control her, she is going to be disgusted by what is going on. Once she figures it out, she may want to find a way to get out of the situation. Because of this, many times the controlling partner is going to exercise their influence as covertly as possible. They don't want their partner to know they are being controlled, or the victim leaves, and there is no one left to control. If the manipulator is successful, then their wife or their girlfriend will continue to be a victim of emotional manipulation, and they may have a hard time realizing that it is going on. This allows the manipulator to keep the control that they want without any risk of being discovered and losing the other person for good. This can also happen with a friend who would use CEM in order to get the outcomes they want when they have a relationship with another person. In this group, one of the common types of manipulators is going to be someone who covertly induced feelings of obligation, sympathy, and guilt in a friend. The friend is being manipulated in this way without being aware that they are being influenced. They may realize that they are behaving in a different way to that friend, but they won't be able to explain why and how. You will find that the professional part of your life can be another place for covert emotional manipulators. There are a lot of people who have worked for a boss or another person who had authority, who seems to trigger some unknown feelings of duty, fear, and guilt in them. People who are manipulated this way may never be able to identify why these feelings exist or where they come from. And in the world of CEMI, the family can be the most problematic. A skilled manipulator is able to find a victim, even within their own family, and the amount of influence that they exercise can be dangerous. This is because the manipulator and the victim will have a very deep connection together because they are related. When blood relations are added in, the amount of influence and control can increase quite a bit. The reason that these family situations are so suited to using CEM is that most people already feel a level of social obligation in order to help their own family. They are willing to go a little further to ensure the needs of their family are attended to. Because of this predisposition, covert emotional manipulative practices will give you a victim that is very malleable. Signs of emotional manipulation and what to do. Love bombing. Love bombing is a tactic that is usually used by emotional manipulators at their first encounter with their victims. This includes the severe, unexpected, and robust expression of positive feelings towards a victim. It may at first seem counterintuitive. Why do they behave so intensively optimistic at first if that person is trying to harm them? Because it suits its own purposes. That's why this produces a deep sense of confidence, affection, and admiration from an individual victim to their manipulator. And this is the concept behind love bombing. Based on the analysis made by the manipulator, the degree to which love bombing is used, and the individuals on whom it is used, forms the basis. A lonely, helpless victim who seeks help and consolation is likely to be more love-bombed by the manipulator because the manipulator will know the victim will be more receptive to it. Likewise, The more the victim is grounded, the less effort the manipulator will have to put into positivity. The definition of the love-bombing technique offers two important lessons on emotional manipulation. First of all, the hidden nature of emotional manipulation is well demonstrated. Imagine trying to understand that love-bombing is a negative thing. Well, this man was very sweet to me, and he made me feel very good. The red flags or warning signs of abuse are unlikely to be raised by such a statement. This is a textbook example of how something can be presented as something positive but has a negative result. The second general lesson relevant to emotional manipulation that can be learned from love bombing is how emotional manipulation is molded in a way that fits into every unique situation. Experienced manipulators have covertly tested and learned from many encounters in their history. Therefore, in any given situation, you know the intensity and timing of each emotional manipulation technique. Empathy. Empathy is the ability to put yourself in the shoes of another person and to consider their emotions and feelings. An empath is a person who can communicate with others on several levels so that they can experience their emotional well-being with accuracy. How empaths have this capacity has yet to be understood to many people, but many think it is innate and transmitted through our DNA. As for how it operates, everything in the universe resonates with electrical energy. Empaths are thought to be capable of perceiving the shifts in the electrical energy around them. Empaths are typically considered to be compassionate, loving, sensitive to other people's feelings, and sympathetic. So, would you be amazed to learn there's a dark side to being an empath? The essence of empathy itself ensures that many are helped and supported by an empath. It also means empaths can see the world much more than we do, and as such, problems can occur in different areas of their lives. The dark side of empaths is their feelings can't be controlled. You may think they are well versed in emotions, but the fact is they are in a constant battle to keep them under control. Sometimes it can bring them down to depression because they so strongly feel the feelings of others, especially the sorrow of others. They find it difficult to differentiate between their feelings and others, and need to find other empaths for them to express their feelings. Empaths can accommodate a large amount of information from their sensitivity to electrical energy when coping with negative energy resulting in fatigue. This can confuse and exhaust them severely while trying to make sense of everything. They are especially prone to negative energy as it greatly upsets them. They will easily become exhausted when all they can feel is negative energy. They are exploited by the less scrupulous among us because empaths are compassionate people who always believe in the good nature of people. Empaths are generous and kind in nature. They will attract only those who take and never give back. An empath can quickly fall into a deep depression when they learn they have been conned. Because empathy tends to give to others rather than receive, it is more likely that they ignore their own well-being, including their mind and body. This is the dark side all too often, since it's all too easy to forget how to care about them because of the pressure of what they feel. They hold back a little piece of their heart, just in case if in the future they're wounded. They can't allow themselves to fall deeply in love because they are scared of all that love, because it could be a lot for them to handle. Empaths are selfless people who are daily bombarded with sensory information, so they often feel like they are carrying a heavy load. They see their role in life as helping others, but it places a huge burden on them, as they cannot help everyone they meet. In spite of the harm to themselves, they would still prefer to bear the concerns of another individual rather than let that individual down. They don't have to give themselves to every person they meet if they are to avoid the dark side of empathy from taking over their lives. At the same time, the walls to their hearts should be let down once in a while. Win-win. The win-win process is simple and straightforward, but often not easy to do. This is because it needs a much different way of thinking than most of us do during disagreements. In addition, as you will see below, it requires patience and self-control. When you try to follow this method, the solutions that you find will pleasingly delight you. There is enhanced satisfaction that comes from your relationships. Step 1. Be alert. Instead of ignoring the differences you may have with the other party, acknowledge them. Be clear that when neglected, these disagreements will rob you of the pleasures of relationships. Please realize that these differences provide a wonderful opportunity to deepen your relationship with people, as long as you politely manage the differences. Step 2. Do away with anger. When one or both harbor hurt or anger, it is very hard for two people to cooperate. When you feel anger, how willing are you to listen patiently? How willing are you to seek a win-win outcome of compromise? When you're hurt, you clearly need to get rid of your hurt and anger in order to achieve a win-win solution. Step 3. Adopt a win-win attitude. What this means is that you are committed to finding a solution that works for both of you to solve your differences. You simply take the position that you won't accept a solution where you win and your partner loses. You must say that you do not consider a compromise where you lose and the other person wins. You commit yourself to agree only to a compromise where you both win and neither of you loses. Step 4. Listen carefully. Take a look at the details you need. You probably know what your win is already. You must also know what the other individual is winning too. How can you consider a win-win without knowing both your own and the other person's win? You have to listen carefully to receive and know this information. It calls for you to listen only to learn without prejudice or censorship. That is, without your own desires or values. You listen to exactly what each other wants. Once you have the information provided by this unbiased listening, you are now ready to find a win-win solution to the problem. Step 5. Brainstorm without emotional interference, with a win-win view. You are now prepared to find a viable solution to your dispute and understand fully which a win is for you both. What you do with step 5 is simply to let things fly and brainstorm ways to suit you both. A vulnerability is exploited by manipulators. There are certain characteristics and behavioral traits that make people more vulnerable to manipulation, and people with dark psychology traits know this full well. They tend to seek out victims who have those specific behavioral traits because they are essentially easy targets. Let's discuss 6 of the traits of the favorite victims of manipulators. Emotional insecurity and fragility. Manipulators like to target victims who are emotionally insecure or emotionally fragile. Unfortunately for these victims, such traits are very easy to identify even in total strangers, so it's easy for experienced manipulators to find them. People who are emotionally insecure tend to be very defensive when they are attacked or when they are under pressure, and that makes them easy to spot in social situations. Even after just a few interactions, a manipulator can gauge with a certain degree of accuracy how insecure a person is. They'll try to provoke their potential targets in a subtle way, and then wait to see how the targets react. If they are overly defensive, manipulators will take it as a sign of insecurity, and they will intensify their manipulative attacks. Manipulators can also tell if a target is emotionally insecure if she redirects accusations or negative comments. They will find a way to put you on the spot, and if you try to throw it back at them, or to make excuses instead of confronting the situation head-on, the manipulator could conclude that you are insecure and therefore an easy target. People who have social anxiety also tend to have emotional insecurity, and manipulators are aware of this fact. In social gatherings, they can easily spot individuals who have social anxiety, then target them for manipulation. Pickup artists are able to identify the girls who seem uneasy in social situations by the way they conduct themselves. Social anxiety is difficult to conceal, especially to manipulators who are experienced at preying on emotional vulnerability. Emotional fragility is different from emotional insecurity. Emotionally insecure people tend to show it all the time, while emotionally fragile people appear to be normal, but they break down emotionally at the slightest provocation. Manipulators like targeting emotionally fragile people because it's very easy to elicit a reaction from them. Once a manipulator finds out that you are emotionally fragile, he is going to jump at the change to manipulate you because he knows it would be fairly easy. Emotional fragility can be temporary, so people with these traits are often targeted by opportunistic manipulators. A person may be emotionally stable most of the time, but she may experience emotional fragility when they are going through a breakup, when they are grieving, when they are dealing with a situation that is emotionally draining. The more diabolical manipulators can earn your trust, bid their time, and wait for you to be emotionally fragile. Alternatively, they can use underhanded methods to induce emotional fragility in a person they are targeting. Sensitive people, highly sensitive people, are those individuals who process information at a deeper level and are more aware of the subtleties in social dynamics. They have lots of positive attributes because they tend to be very considerate of others, and they watch their step to avoid causing people any harm, whether directly or indirectly. Such people tend to dislike any form of violence or cruelty, and they are easily upset by news reports about disastrous occurrences, or even depictions of gory scenes in movies. Sensitive people also tend to get emotionally exhausted from taking in other people's feelings. When they walk into a room, they have the immediate ability to detect other people's moods because they are naturally skilled at identifying and interpreting other people's body language cues, facial expressions, and tonal variations. Manipulators like to target sensitive people because they are easy to manipulate. If you are sensitive to certain things, manipulators can use them against you. They will feign certain emotions to draw sensitive people in so that they can exploit them. Sensitive people also tend to scare easily. They have a heightened startle reflex, which means that they are more likely to show clear signs of fear or nervousness in potentially threatening situations. For example, sensitive people are more likely to jump up when someone sneaks up on them, even before they determine whether they are in any real danger. If you are a sensitive person, this trait can be very difficult to hide, and malicious people will be able to see it from a mile away. Sensitive people also tend to be withdrawn. They are mostly introverts, and they like to keep to themselves because social stimulation can be emotionally draining for them. Manipulators who are looking to control others are more likely to target people who are introverted because that trait makes it easy to isolate potential victims. Manipulators can also identify sensitive people by listening to how they talk. Sensitive people tend to be very proper. They never use vulgar language, and they tend to be very politically correct because they are trying to avoid offending anyone. They also tend to be polite, and they say please and thank you more often than others. Manipulators go after such people because they know that they are too polite to dismiss them right away. Sensitive people will indulge anyone because they don't want to be rude, and that gives maliciously people a way in. Emphatic people. Emphatic people are generally similar to highly sensitive people, except that they are more attuned to the feelings of others and the energy of the world around them. They tend to internalize other people's suffering to the point that it becomes their own. In fact, for some of them, it can be difficult to distinguish someone's discomfort from their own. Emphatic people make the best partners because they feel everything you feel. However, this makes them particularly easy to manipulate, which is why malicious people like to target them. Malicious people can feign certain emotions and convey those emotions to emphatic people who will feel them as though they were real. That it opens them up for exploitation. Emphatic people are the favorite targets of psychopathic conmen because they feel so deeply for others. A conman can make up stories about financial difficulties and swindle lots of money from emphatic people. The problem with being emphatic is that because you have such strong emotions, you easily dismiss your own doubts about people because you would much rather offer help to a person who turns out to be a liar than deny help to a person who turns out to be telling the truth. Emphatic people have a big hearts, and they tend to be extremely generous, often to their own detriment. They are highly charitable, and they feel guilty when others around them suffer, even if it's not their fault and they can't do anything about it. Malicious people have a very easy time taking such people on guilt trips. They are the kind of people who would willingly fork over their life savings to help their friends get out of debt, even if it means they would be ruined financially. Malicious people like to get into relationships with emphatic people because they are easy to take advantage of. Emphatic people try to avoid getting into intimate relationships in the first place because they know that it's easy for them to get engulfed in such relationships and to lose their identities in the process. However, manipulators will doggedly pursue them because they know that once they get it, they can guilt the emphatic person into doing anything they want. Fear of loneliness. Any people are afraid of being alone, but this fear is more heightened in a small percentage of the population. This kind of fear can be truly paralyzing for those who experience it, and it can open them up to exploitation by malicious people. For example, there are many people who stay in dysfunctional relationships because they are afraid they will never find someone else to love them if they break up with an abusive partner. Manipulators can identify this fear in a victim, and they'll often do everything they can to fuel it further, to make sure that the person is crippled by it. People who are afraid of being alone can tolerate or even rationalize any kind of abuse. The fear of being alone can be easy to spot in a potential victim. People with this kind of fear tend to exude some level of desperation at the beginning of relationships, and they can sometimes come across as clingy. While ordinary people may think of being clingy as a red flag, manipulative people will see it as an opportunity to exploit somebody. If you are attached to them, they'll use manipulative techniques to make you even more dependent on them. They can withhold love and affection, e.g., by using the silent treatment, to make the victim fear that she's about to get dumped, so that they act out of desperation and cede more control to the manipulator. The fear of being alone is, for the most part, a social construct, and it disproportionately affects women more than men. For generations, our society has taught women that their goal in life is to get married and have children. So, even the more progressive women who reject this social construct are still plagued by social pressures to adhere to those old standards. That being said, the fact is that men also tend to be afraid of being alone. People with abandonment issues stemming from childhood tend to experience the fear of loneliness to a higher degree. There are also those people who may not necessarily fear loneliness in general, but they are afraid of being separated from the important people in their lives. For example, lots of people end up staying in abusive or dysfunctional relationships because they are afraid of being separated from their children. Fear of disappointing others. We all feel a certain sense of obligation towards the people in our lives, but there are some people who are extremely afraid of disappointing others. This kind of fear is similar to the fear of embarrassment and the fear of rejection, because it means that the person puts a lot of stock into how others perceive him or her. The fear of disappointing others can occur naturally, and it can actually be useful in some situations. Parents who are afraid of disappointing their families will work harder to provide for them, and children who are afraid of disappointing their parents will study harder at school. In this case, the fear is actually constructive. However, it becomes unhealthy when it's directed at the wrong people, or when it forces you to compromise your own comfort and happiness. When manipulators find out that you have a fear of disappointing others, they'll try to put you in a position where you feel like you owe them something. They'll do certain favors for you, and then they'll manipulate you into believing that you have a sense of obligation towards them. They will then guilt you into complying with any request whenever they want something from you. Personality-dependent disorders and emotional dependency. Dependent personality disorder refers to a real disorder that is characterized by a person having an excessive and even pervasive need to be taken care of. This need often leads the person to be submissive towards the people in their lives and to be clingy and afraid of separation. People with this disorder act in ways that are meant to elicit caregiving. They tend to practice what's called learned helplessness. This is where they act out of a conviction that they are unable to do certain things for themselves, and they need the help of others. Such people have a hard time making decisions, even when dealing with simple things like picking out which clothes to wear. They need constant reassurance and advice, and they let others take the lead in their own lives. These are the kinds of people who either move back into their parents' homes as adults or treat their spouses and partners as though they are their parents. Manipulators like to target people with dependent personality disorders because they are very easy to control and dominate. These people willingly cede control over their lives to others. So when manipulators come knocking, they don't face much resistance. Manipulators start off by giving them a false sense of security, but once they have won their trust, they switch gears and start imposing their will on them. Emotional dependency is somewhat similar to dependent personality disorder, but it doesn't rise to the level of clinical significance. It stems from having low self-esteem, and it's often a result of childhood abandonment issues. People with an emotional dependency will play the submissive role in relationships for fear of losing their partners. They tend to be very agreeable because they want to please the people in their lives. Such people are easy to manipulate, and malicious people can easily dominate them. Dark persuasion. The first difference you will notice between positive and dark persuasion is the motive behind it. Positive persuasion is used in order to encourage someone to complete an action that isn't going to cause them any harm. In some cases, such as with the negotiator saving a hostage, this persuasion can be used to help save lives. But with dark persuasion, there isn't really any form of moral motive. The motive is usually amoral and often immoral. If positive persuasion is understood as a way to help people help themselves, then dark persuasion is more of the process of making people act against their own self-interest. Sometimes people are going to do these actions begrudgingly, knowing that they are probably not making the right choice, but they do it because they are eager to stop the incessant persuasion efforts. In other cases, the best dark persuader is going to make their victim think that they acted wisely, but the victim is actually doing the opposite in that case. So, what are the motivations for someone who is a dark persuader? This is going to depend on the situation and the individual who is doing the persuading. Some people like to persuade their victims in order to serve their own self-interests. Others are going to act through with the intention just to cause some harm to the other person. In some cases, the persuader is not going to really benefit from darkly persuading their victim, but they do so because they want to inflict pain on the other person. And still, others enjoy the control that this kind of persuasion gives to them. You will also find that the outcome you get from dark persuasion is going to differ from what happens with positive persuasion. With positive persuasion, you are going to get one of three scenarios, including the following. The benefit goes to the person who is being persuaded. There is a win-win benefit for the persuaded and the persuader. There is a mutual benefit for the person who is persuaded and the third party. All of these outcomes are good because they will involve a positive result for the person who is being persuaded. Sometimes there will be others who benefit from these actions, but out of all three situations, the persuaded party is always going to benefit. With dark persuasion, the outcome is going to be very different. The persuader is the one who will always benefit when they exercise their need for influence or control. The one who is being persuaded often goes against what is in their self-interest when they listen, and they are not going to benefit from all this dark persuasion. Unmasking the dark persuader. At this point you may be curious about who is using these dark methods of persuasion. Are there actually people out there who are interested in using this kind of persuasion and using it against others to cause harm? The main characteristics of a dark persuader are either an indifference toward or an inability to care about how persuasion is going to impact others. Such people who use this kind of persuasion are going to be often narcissistic and will see their own needs as more important than the needs of others. They may even be sociopathic and unable to grasp the idea of someone else's emotions. Any times, this kind of dark persuasion is going to show up in a relationship. Often one, but sometimes both partners are going to be inclined towards trying to use dark persuasion on each other. If these attempts are persistent and endure, then this type of relationship is going to be classified as psychologically abusive, and that is not healthy for the victim in that relationship. Often they will not realize that there is something going on, or that they are darkly persuaded until it is too late, and they are stuck there. There are many examples of using this kind of dark persuasion in a relationship. If one partner stops the other partner from taking a new job opportunity or doesn't allow them to go out with friends, then this could be an example of dark persuasion. The dark persuader will work to convince the victim that they are acting in a way that is best for the relationship. In reality, the victim is going through a process that harms them and the relationship. Deception. Deception is another key aspect that comes with dark psychology. Like many other tactics that come with dark psychology, it is sometimes difficult to tell whether one instance of deception is considered dark or not. But before we explore more into this, We need to first understand what deception is all about in our world. Deception is going to be any word or action that is capable of making someone believe something that is not true. Fraudulently providing evidence for something that is false, implying falsehood, omitting the truth, and lying are all examples of deception. Not all types of deception will count as dark psychology. Everyone is going to deceive others to some extent or another. They may deceive others because they feel inadequate, because they feel embarrassed, or even as a kindness. For example, some studies have shown that many men are going to lie about their heights. This doesn't mean that they practice dark psychology. In addition, it is common for people to deceive themselves about a range of issues, such as their happiness, their ambition, and their health. Deception is going to become dark any time when it is carried out with an indifferent or negative intention towards the victim. Dark deception is an understanding that the truth is not going to serve the deceptive aims of the deceiver. The deceiver is going to take the truth and either ignore, hide, or change it in favor of a version of events that suits their purpose a little bit better. Those who employ dark deception mean to do it as a way to harm, rather than to help. They want to help out their own interests, but they don't care who gets hurt in the process. Deceptive tactics. There are many different deceptive tactics that the manipulator is able to use at their disposal. Remember that this deception is the process of hiding information from the victim in order to reach their overall goals. There are 4 categories of tactics that fall into deception, and any given deception is likely to involve a blend of each of them, which can make it even harder for the victim to figure out what is going on. The first deceptive tactic that can be used is lying. This is the first technique that the manipulator is going to choose as soon as they know that the victim is susceptible to lies and has trouble figuring out the truth. This is often because the victim is someone who trusts others, or the manipulator may have worked on this victim for some time so that they lower their guard. The manipulator is also able to find ways to hide up the lies and then explain the discrepancies if the victim starts to notice. Any deception that occurs with lying is likely to occur in a way that is very subtle and is thought out ahead of time. A deceiver is going to embed their lie into some information that is truthful. For example, the manipulator would start out with a story that is about 90% true and 10% false. Because it sounds legitimate and most of the story can be proven as true, the victim will think the whole story is true. Implying is another form of deception. Implying is when the manipulator is going to suggest something false is true rather than boldly stating it. If the manipulator wants to deceive a victim about how much money they have, then they could either lie or imply about it. A lie would be something like, "Oh, I'm a successful guy. I've made a lot of money," even though the manipulator knows this information is not true. But when they imply they are rich, they may say something like, "It's so stressful trying to handle things with my accountant. Trying to get my tax bill down takes a lot of my time." The manipulator has acted and spoken in a way that makes the other person think they are wealthy, but they never state it. Omission is another option for the deceiver. This is a failure to mention something, usually a fact that is pretty important. That is true. Omission doesn't use a falsehood in order to cover the truth like the other 2 options. Instead, this one is going to ignore the truth or just leave it out. Often this piece of information is important for the victim to know about in order to make an informed decision. The manipulator would leave this out to protect themselves and ensure that the victim didn't have all the information. One way that the deceiver can use omission is to create their own emotional fence with that situation. This is a tactic where the manipulator implies that a particular period of their life or some particular topic is painful or uncomfortable for them to discuss. The victim, feeling bad and wanting to be considerate, will avoid bringing up this topic. This gives the manipulator a chance to avoid the truth while still making the victim feel guilty when they try to bring up that painful topic. And the final form of deception is going to be the most elaborate and often criminal and also form. This is known as fraud. Instead of the deceiver simply lying about something from the past, this kind of deceit is going to have false stories, documents, and some other evidence in order to back up whatever their lie says. The deceiver is going to use these things in a subtle way. They would never say something like, "I'm a doctor. Take a look at my certificate." Instead, they will use some subtle displays to show off to the victim. They will try to steer away from being too pushy with their fraudulent claims, because they know that doing this will make the victim feel that something is wrong with the situation. Fraud is becoming more common than ever because of the internet. Deceivers can often work with some professional software in order to make documents that look pretty realistic, no matter what type of document they need. This can make it really hard to tell whether you are working with someone who is telling you the truth or if they are deceiving you. When this dark deception starts to enter the realm of fraudulence, it can be a bad sign. It shows that the deceiver is dangerous, and they are committed to sticking with that dark psychology. They are risking serious criminal charges to do this kind of manipulation, and they are confident that they are able to do this without anyone really noticing it at all. Hypnotism. Hypnosis is still a very controversial topic. I've been researching it for a few years now. There is a lot of confusion, mystification, and pseudoscience surrounding the subject. Functional and conceptual reflections should be performed. I intend in this column to weave some of them together and even raise some questions. Hypnosis is a myth. I like this expression. It sums up very well the amount we don't know about hypnosis and how much fascination it can arouse. By myth, we can conceive of what is fabulous, spectacular, but also no longer corresponds precisely to the truth. The myth has more efficacy and is lacking in truth. This, however, does not preclude a critical and sensible reflection on this modern myth, hypnosis, and an attempt to understand it in a sincere and rational way. To do so, we should direct our gaze beyond the saturated field of mystifications in which it has always been plunged. Before Franz Anton Mesmer, 1734–1815, father of modern hypnosis, trance states and their modes of induction were relegated to the plane of the sacred, the supernatural, before the advent of medicine as a specific and privileged body of scientific knowledge and practice for the production or re-establishment of health. Healing was a process that was always linked to the supernatural. Healing invariably passed through religion. It was Mesmer who definitely led the hypnotic practice of the religious field to the medical field. The aura of magic, of witchcraft, of miraculous or divine healing has always been close to shamanistic or healing practices. What once belonged to the plane of the unexplainable has penetrated the field of science, and there have been several attempts at a rational understanding of what this phenomenon is. However, as they have always been and are still closely tied to the field of religions, the trance states still inhabit an immense terrain of ignorance. Fables would almost be an automatic mechanism for understanding this, which has always been explained or understood in the light of myths and religions. Hypnosis is very mystified, even in the media that advocates for it some scientific understanding or validation. Even today, there is no shortage of misunderstandings about what it is or would be. Disregarded by some or deified by others, it circulates in the imaginary as a fact about which little is known whatsoever. The tendency is ignorance, and judgments precipitated or filled with other interests, financial, ideological, corporatist, than the sincere and humble search for knowledge. Those who exaggerate their powers and who make themselves heard at the full power of diffusion in the mass media are generally more interested in personal and financial self-promotion than in clarifying what hypnosis is. The more ignorance, the more obscure, the better, because they can thus be clothed with the aura of hidden knowledge and talents, revealed only by a special process of learning which would overcome the common exchanges between human beings. Thus, the technique itself, always demonstrated in favor of concealment of what it is totally lost in the midst of the sea of manipulations that manufacture it as another illusion to be sold and consumed by our society from time to time. Yes, the trick, the surprise, the illusion sell. Many prefer illusion to knowledge. The joy of being deluded, the charm, sells more than enlightenment. There is grace in delusion, the bountiful benefit, a sudden, without reason and without explanation, is full of grace and a gift from God, and often the work of knowing is a process of disillusionment and disenchantment. It shows the limits of some realities and causes frustrations. They extinguish with some horizons and create others. But we are so attached to those that we do not open ourselves to the new. Hypnotic trance states have always been present in the history of mankind, whether in religious rituals, shamanistic rituals, festivals, or even in modern societies, mass events, and all those who in some way reproduce the original symbolic relations between men. In modernity, however, medicine appropriates trance experiments to try to grant them a status of scientificity. This fact is still underway, the attempt to scientifically address the phenomenon of hypnosis. Given the impact usually produced on everyone involved, whether hypnotized or observers, hypnosis is something that deserves attention. Whether it is a neurological phenomenon, psychological or social coercion, the sensible and sincere attempts to understand it are valid, even if hypnosis is simply a farce. I have no doubt that through it we can better understand what human beings, their psyche, and their relationship to others of their kind are. The 7 major myths of hypnosis. These are untruths or exaggerations regarding the definition, process, and purpose of something. I will list some myths along with their refutations about hypnotism. 1. Is hypnosis sleeping? No. The hypnotic trance is a modified state of consciousness, called the alpha state. In this state, other than physiological sleep, there is strong electrical activity in the brain due to the very high level of concentration that the subject is performing. Simplifying hypnosis to the maximum, we can define it as monoidism, that is, absolute focus on the imagination. 2. Hypnosis is conditional. Trusting partnership between the hypnotist and subject is required, so if the subject does not want to be hypnotized, they will not be. In the old days, it was said that the hypnotist became the operator of the mind of the hypnotized subject, but I would say that the hypnotist is another facilitator of the trance. It bridges the conscious mind and the unconscious, thus allowing the subject to access a state of consciousness which allows the subject to experience the full potential of their own mind. 3. Hypnosis works. If this is true, 100 of the people who can pay attention are mentally weak. After all, if you dream awake, have fun reading a good book, travel listening to an interesting story, or go to the movies and get emotional about them, you go into a trance. Have you ever encountered a person who has a lost, seemingly distracted look, and when you catch her attention, she takes a little fright? This person is not distracted. In fact, she is hyper-concentrated, that is, in trance. The truth is that once in a while, our brain hibernates for a few minutes to save energy. Have you ever wondered if you needed to be aware of everything you do all the time? Consider someone who drives a car. When he was learning, he found it all complicated, steering, gears, brakes, throttle, clutch, and all at the same time. But now he operates so unconsciously, or automatically, that he even commits himself to reckless talking on a cell phone while driving. Basically, if a human being is able to concentrate and obey the instructions, he can be hypnotized. For the hypnotized subject will do whatever the hypnotist says. The human mind is not mother's house. There are particular moral principles of each person, and these principles are obeyed and protected by the subject's unconscious mind. Thus, it is true to say that a hypnotized person will do nothing against their moral principles, religion, family, values, physical integrity. That is, if you would not perform an action while awake, you will not do so while hypnotized. 5. The hypnotized subject will tell all his secrets too. Topic of 4 answers that 1. 6. Hypnosis is a physiological phenomenon. It is a legitimate neurophysiological phenomenon where brain functioning has very special characteristics, such as muscle relaxation, anesthesia, dilation of the pupils, and memory enhancement. During the trance, there are actually changes in the brain, and this has already been confirmed in a study by examination of volunteers using an encephalogram. Perhaps in mysticism, there is a little hypnosis, but in hypnosis, there is nothing mystical. 7. Can a person not return from the trance? Back from where? You're not going anywhere. The advantage of being hypnotized is that you can travel the whole world without leaving your body. just with your mind. Finally, hypnosis is a safe method for both entertainment, street, stage, and clinical applications, hypnotherapy and the like. If you believe in God, see the ability to be hypnotized as a divine gift for your self-improvement. But if you do not believe in a deity, see hypnosis as a very powerful tool that nature has given to the human being to accelerate positive changes in life. Hypnosis techniques. There are three main techniques of hypnosis used in clinical treatment. Clinical hypnosis, that is, hypnosis performed in the office by a trained professional, can follow different methodologies or concepts, depending on the line of work of the hypnologist. Today, we will present the three most known lines and their main characteristics. Conditional hypnosis, created and patented by Luis Carlos Crozera. A conditional hypnosis is a technique used to rid the patient's mind of blockages that directly interfere with his physical and emotional health. In this technique, deep body relaxation is done so that the patient has a decrease in his brain frequency and, with the purest mind, be led by the hypnotist to the traumatic records that accompany him. At this point, the professional removes the registered emotional charge, disassociating the trauma from the given situation. Upon returning from the trance, the patient already has an important behavioral change when faced with what caused him anguish. Thus, the hypnotist uses the post-hypnotic suggestion, a technique that executes the commands inserted during the trance, in order to achieve the best possible results. In conditional hypnosis, the patient does not interact with the hypnotist. Ericksonian hypnosis. In this technique of clinical hypnosis, described by the American psychiatrist Milton Erickson, the patient is suggested to seek within himself new learning that leads to a reformulation of thoughts and truths. Thus, the patient is led to the trance and suggested to relive, in a metaphorical way, the situation that causes him pain and suffering, but with a completely different outcome, aiming for the trauma to be forgotten. The idea is not to change what has been experienced, but to give other responses to the trauma, since it is believed that the patient has all the resources necessary to solve his own problem. Classic hypnosis. This method is mostly in disuse because it presents less efficient results than the other methodologies. Classic hypnosis consists of searching in the memory of the patient for the facts that bring him suffering and making him understand that it is part of the past and should no longer reach the present. How to hypnotize someone without them knowing. Have you ever heard of a method that many claims to be able to achieve through repetitive motions, with the help of pendulums or finger movements, which allows them to stay in a state of trance? Is it possible? Well, some people believe so. Texts produced in Egypt in 1550 BC show evidence that older people already used these practices. Well, the name of this method is hypnosis, and, in fact, this is a psychological state which brings together several phenomena that occur in our mind and which can produce different impacts. It can be conducted by a voice and has been used as an instrument in the treatment of different diagnoses. While there are those who believe in past lives and those who do not, it is true that hypnosis can cause the patient to return to a certain age. For example, hypnosis may return someone up to an X age when he may have contracted some kind of trauma. Let's look at a situation to illustrate. A patient is in a hypnotized state. The doctor puts his hands on the patient's arm and warns that he is applying an ointment, when in fact he is not applying anything. He just touches the patient's hands. Despite this, the patient has the feeling that the doctor is actually applying an ointment, even being able to smell the ointment as it passes through a positive olfactory hallucination. The patient who is hypnotized really believes the doctor's words. Another example is the case of a patient who smells a scent. When they smell the gunpowder, if this smell happens to be strongly associated with when they were 10 years of age, then the patient can regress until the age of 10 to try to solve some kind of childhood problem. Not everyone is able to perform this practice because a badly done hypnosis session can cause great harm. This is because hypnosis is not restricted only to the return to time, but also the treatment of certain psychological problems, which can be aggravated if not treated by a specialized professional. For this reason, only those who have technical knowledge of the use of hypnosis should practice it. Brainwashing. Brainwashing is the most serious form of all. Brainwashing is the way that we have been tricked into purchasing meaningless things through years of consumerism and toxic capitalism. Brainwashing is the way that political leaders have been able to lead their armies to commit unjustified murder. Brainwashing is the method that cult leaders have used to convince their followers to kill others or themselves. We would never endorse brainwashing, and absolutely no part of you should ever use this on other people. We do want you to be aware of what brainwashing looks like, how to stop it, and how to avoid it so that you never have to fear becoming someone that you are not. Brainwashing can be very toxic to the point that it's almost like someone else is controlling your body. Think of a scary alien movie that you might have seen in your life. It might have involved the alien taking over the host, depleting the body from what it used to be, and instead replacing that person so that they can be controlled. This is a common trope in science fiction and fantasy media, but it is the very real way that brainwashers have been able to take over their subjects. Brainwashing involves removing that person from their own body through deeply embedded manipulative tactics over a long period of time. Eventually, the victim becomes just an empty shell of the person that they used to be, and the manipulator is able to take over and have complete control over them. You won't always be able to see the ways that brainwashing has hurt someone else. Of course, there are obvious signs, like Nazis murdering innocent people and the Manson family committing murder in the past as well. However, there is more intense brainwashing we can't so easily pick up on, such as how certain relationships might involve one partner completely controlling the other, or parental figures having entire power over their children. On the outside, it can seem easier to point out the methods of manipulation, but when you are under the control of the other person, it will be much more difficult to really see the methods of persuasion. Brainwashing is never something that you should use. It is the complete opposite of the kind of thing we're trying to help you with within this book. Brainwashing is all about taking away choice and option from the other person. Persuasion is when you can still influence someone, but at their own free will. Some people need guidance, but they should never have their basic human rights stripped from them and replaced with the ideologies of other people with a hidden agenda. What we understand about brainwashing? Unfortunately, we can't put a date on when we first started to discover what brainwashing is or how it works. Even to this day, we still don't know all there is about brainwashing or the way that others might be manipulated. It is the absolute worst form of manipulation and can be like a disease that takes over other people. It's not just an instant moment of convincing someone of an idea. When you are brainwashing someone, you are entirely changing the way that they think. You are taking their behavior from one type of thought to the next. This is a toxic pattern that we need to be very cautious of. Brainwashing can ruin your life, so it's important that we understand what it really is and how it works. Brainwashing isn't something that happens overnight. It is a staged event that will have different steps taking the person throughout the process of becoming brainwashed. Think of people who have Stockholm Syndrome. This is when they become like family members to their captors. There are some cases of children getting kidnapped, kept locked up, and then eventually becoming part of the family, where they can walk around with the actual people who kidnapped them in public without saying a thing. It's a dangerous tactic that keeps many individuals trapped in a cycle of toxic behavior. This doesn't happen just when someone is kidnapped. It takes years and years of conditioning in order to get them to a place where they are willing and ready to blindly follow their captors. We can become brainwashed as an entire society. Think of Nazis who were able to believe that it was actually right to kill millions of people at a time. This didn't happen overnight either. A fear was brought to the attention of people that needed a solution. The solution ended up being that a certain population be wiped out, so it became a sort of dependency that everyone blindly partook in. The thing about brainwashing is that once it's even realized that someone might have been brainwashed, they will still be really good at convincing themselves of their delusions. They might become aware of what has happened, but sometimes admitting that they are wrong is really challenging. Rather than breaking free from the manipulation and separating yourself from what happened, it can be easier for certain individuals to stick around and just convince themselves that what they experienced wasn't as bad as what they thought. They'll be really good at buying into their delusions. Brainwashing will start with a form of isolation. Sometimes this will be in an extreme circumstance. It might include the isolation period of kidnapping someone and keeping them as a prisoner. On a lighter side, it might involve physically isolating them and making them travel to a completely different area. If you were trying to recruit people to join a cult, you would require that they come and live on your commune. If you allowed them to stay home and around others, then you would be giving them the chance to discuss what you might be doing with others, making it more likely that someone else will talk some sense into them. In extreme cases, brainwashing might also include a period of depriving them of something. For prisoners, this might mean that their food or water is taken away. You might also keep them from being able to get any sleep at all. This is an extreme tactic that is seen more by those who might end up having Stockholm Syndrome and that intense level of brainwashing. By depriving the victim of these basic human needs, then they are becoming more dependent and desperate to please their captor. Their brain power is stifled, so they won't be able to think clearly. It will be easier to infiltrate their minds and take advantage of this. There will also be a sense of responsibility given to the people that are being brainwashed. For example, once moved to a cult, they might be given activities and chores that they need to do in order to keep them from having the chance to be alone for too long or to think too frequently about what's happening. There will also be things that are encouraged to be done in groups. When someone is exposed to other groups, this is like the social proof stage of their manipulation, and they will be more likely to be able to fall for whatever messages they might be forced to believe. This exposure to other people that have been brainwashed will also give them the chance to see that what is happening is okay. If everyone else is brainwashed around them, then it gives them a sense of normalcy. Any doubts they had will fade in this stage, because they will see actual people who are like them, who are also able to fall for the same kinds of messages. Throughout this entire brainwashing process, the people in charge are always going to have more reasons and methods of keeping different individuals loyal to their cause. They will have answers prepared to any questions that challenge the legitimacy of the process. They will enable themselves to be prepared with a strategy to keep people around who might be showing interest in leaving. They have convinced themselves that they are right and that all outsiders are wrong. Those who might have known someone who is brainwashed understands just how frustrating it can be as an outsider. You can see things so blatant, but there are so many secrets and small words exchanged within this binding institution that it's not going to be easy to break free from it. Let's discuss some of the actual symptoms of brainwashing and what it will do to the victims in the next section. After you have learned this, we will enable you with the tools needed to ensure that you never have to fear becoming brainwashed yourself. Determining what brainwashing looks like. The term brainwash gets tossed around frequently. It's the way that we describe the other political party that doesn't agree with us. It's the method that parents use on their teens who might be acting like one of their newer friends. It's the way that we describe the treatment by someone's boyfriend who we feel is controlling their girlfriend. While there are certainly forms of manipulation here, brainwashing is much different than just negative persuasion. You might believe the propaganda you've seen even plays a role in whether or not you are being brainwashed, but it's important to remember that it is all presented differently. Brainwashing isn't just influence. It is total replacement of the way that someone might believe different things, the ideas that they share, and the things that they might choose to affiliate themselves with. Manipulation is when you get someone to do something for you. Brainwashing is when you are able to get someone to think and act exactly like how you are. Those who are brainwashed are not weak or stupid. You are not someone who is completely oblivious when you are brainwashed. Those who find they have been brainwashed are completely in control of their thoughts at one point. However, the brainwashing is so subtle that it will eventually take over those thoughts. The victim will like objects and things that they are confused about or don't agree with. However, the person doing the brainwashing is very good at making sure that they have an opposition to everything that might come in question. They have been able to convince themselves so deeply of their delusions that it will be incredibly easy to do this for other people as well. Those who are brainwashed might have gone through some sort of trauma in their life that has left them feeling empty. This is why you will often see brainwashing in religious cults that offer up some sort of belief. These cults will find people who might have lost loved ones, those who might be completely lonely, or someone who might have nothing at their disposal, such as a job or income. They will take advantage of people who are down on their luck and offer solutions that will bring them out of this place. They specifically pick out people who need help, because these people will be most likely to agree to things that others might be more resistant to. The cult will be the saving grace, so right away it will be easier for the victims to become believers. A cult might offer homes to homeless teens, and then these teens will start to look up to the person that provided this to them, believing that they are some sort of angel. From there, the stages of brainwashing can occur, and it will be much easier to keep these people on board. The cult will also take steps to make sure that they attack the person for what they did, but in a passive level. They might blame the homelessness on that teen, telling them that they made poor decisions that led to their status in life. They will offer up a solution and change, making it seem as though the teen has to become a new person now. This all sounds so harmless. How could helping a homeless teen and giving them advice on their ways be negative? The negative part then comes in, where they will force obedience. They will state that they did something wrong, so then it becomes about making sure that the teen pays for their wrongdoing and listens to the words of the cult leader now. The real toxic part comes in after this happens, when the teen might decide that they don't want to be a blind follower. The cult leader will then take away the opportunities that they presented the teen with originally and not allow them to have any benefit anymore. What else can that teen do then, other than give in and be submissive to this cult? How can they remove themselves and do better if they had already received help from this cult in the beginning? Think of a situation like the Fails Church, located in the west of the United States. This stands for the Fundamentalist Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. It is a Christian organization in Utah under the guise of Mormonism. They practice polygamy, with many wives for one singular husband. The leader of the church is now behind bars, Warren Jeffs. He claims to be a prophet and states he communicates directly with God. Before being arrested, Warren Jeffs managed to have 80 wives. Polyamory doesn't have to be toxic. There are groups of people who like to be in a relationship with multiple people at a time. When there is one man that claims to be a prophet with 80 wives, this is a direct sign that there is an intense amount of brainwashing involved. Jeffs is in prison now after it was discovered that he had impregnated several underage girls. Regardless of the specifics of this man, the cult in general still operates today within Utah and is spreading to other states in an attempt to escape government and public scrutiny. They go throughout all of the steps in order to keep people brainwashed. It's harder in this case because many people are born into it. It is still an example of how this works. They start by creating a God for their followers to believe in. Of course, many people worship the Christian God and Jesus Christ, but they have construed their version to fit their own agenda. This God is one that is brutal and demands much sacrifice from followers. They isolate their people by keeping them in the middle of nowhere, Utah. They aren't allowed to use cell phones or the internet, and a lot of homes won't even have clocks. They are then told that any outsider does want to hurt them, or that all outsiders are sinners. They are forced to wear different clothing specific to their community, and they have to keep their hair long as well. Women are even told to keep their hair long so that Jesus can use it to wash their feet when they get to heaven. These rules are all strict, and people follow them because it is all that they know. They have been stripped of ever having the chance to be someone that isn't involved in this cult. It is beyond freedom of religion. It is malicious control. They have been isolated from the outside world and are only taught that their own is important. They have been told they are sinners and that they are wrong for being who they are their entire lives. They have been told to follow their leaders, and the words that they believe come straight from God, because if they don't, they are going to go to hell. They cast out those who go against them, and once you leave the cult, you are not allowed back in. This is a staged process and didn't just happen overnight. It takes years of conditioning, And when someone does manage to break free, there are intense processes in place that will keep these people trapped even deeper. The only way out is to escape and never go back. Even those that do manage to escape can end up running back, all because they don't know anything else. They have been taught to believe in this life so much that everything else feels so wrong to them. What if someone today came and told you that you actually aren't supposed to sit in a chair the way that you do? Chairs are meant to be sat in backwards from now on. How are you going to handle that? You might try this new way, but it will never be the same. This is an extreme example, but it can start to help you better understand exactly what brainwashing is and how it can be so challenging to break free from it. How to recognize a dark manipulator and what to do. The best way to prevent yourself from becoming manipulated is to know the warning signs of what manipulators might look like in the first place. We all have things about us that can help lead others to get a sense of the person that we might truly be at our core, and manipulators are no exception. Unfortunately, there is no uniform that all manipulators will wear. Every single one is going to present themselves differently, and it's up to us to do our best to ensure that we aren't letting these people into our lives. Manipulators will usually come from a place of deep insecurity. Anyone who has control issues usually does so because they don't feel as though they have control over their own lives. Maybe they were in a situation in which they weren't able to change the outcome. Perhaps they were born into a life that they don't want, or they haven't advanced as far as they thought they would have. Perhaps they grew up under the control of someone else and are looking to take that freedom back. We won't always be able to know exactly why someone might be a manipulator, but we can at least understand what their basic intention is. Remember that hurt people hurt other people in some cases, so you don't have to shut manipulators out of your life right away. Confront them when they are trying to be controlling, and you might discover that you are actually able to help them work through some of their biggest issues. The first thing that you will notice about a manipulator is the way that they try to make you feel differently. We are all in control of our own emotions. You can influence how other people might be feeling, but you will never be able to outright control the emotions that they might be experiencing. Notice if someone seems as though they are trying to make you feel bad. A manipulator is going to be really good at pointing out your insecurities and making you feel guilty or silly for having these types of feelings. If you say something that's less than intelligent, they will make sure that you feel ashamed because of this. They will laugh way harder at you than what someone would normally do, and they might ask you things such as why, with a very passive-aggressive tone. For example, imagine that you are in a restaurant with some friends, and a cheesy pop song comes on. You might say something like, "I actually love this song." Your friends might all laugh a bit, but for the most part, good friends wouldn't cut too deep in terms of how they might tease you for liking it. A manipulator, however, would definitely want to make you feel bad about this choice. They might say something such as, "Oh my God, what's wrong with you?" Or "You always like the worst songs." They will take this opportunity to make fun of your overall character, not just tease you in this singular moment. Manipulators will dangle themselves as bait in front of you in order to be more fearful of withdrawing. They will want to instill you the fear that if you don't make them a central part of your life, they will completely isolate you. This is when they might start to use the silent treatment as well. If you say anything to make them upset, they might completely withdraw and ignore all your efforts to reach out. They are trying to break you down and feel desperate, so rather than talking things out like a healthy person, they will instead try to make you feel guilty to the point that you're begging them to come back. Manipulator is going to talk about themselves excessively. They might listen to you, but they will only pretend to do so in order to get you to try and listen to them. If you have an issue with them and present it like, "I feel like you really hurt my feelings the other day," then they will turn it back around on you. They will say something such as, "Ok, but what about that time you did this to me?" They will deflect and make sure that the point of the conversation comes back on their own hurt. If you are trying to open up and share something with them, such as "I've been especially anxious today," they will again make the problem about them once again by saying something such as, "Oh my gosh, I have been super anxious too." They will then make the conversation about themselves and ensure that everyone is listening to their side and disregarding everything else. They will be under the impression that no one else has problems as big as them. They will only care about resolving their own issues, but wouldn't offer you the same kind of help in return. Manipulators aren't afraid to push boundaries. They will not be concerned if you ask them not to do something, and they will just go about their life as they please in a way that suits them more than anyone else. They will also pay close attention to your emotions and the things that you say in order to use that against you. If you state that you are in a bad mood and later in the day try to bring the issue up with them, they will say something such as, "You're just in a bad mood. Don't worry about it now." They will hang on to every last word that you say as if they were recording your conversation and use your own words against you whenever they are presented with this opportunity. Look at obvious signs of manipulation as well. These might be more natural, with people not realizing that they are doing it. It is the subtle and hidden manipulation that can be a bit scarier because it might have taken more planning on their part. Making statements such as "you should do this" with authority is an obvious sign they're trying to control you. They might also obviously talk with a really loud tone and try to control the room just with the power of their voice. Oppositely, they might keep their arms crossed and stay quiet in the corner of a room where everyone else is having fun. By doing this, they are making that situation about them. For example, think of a boyfriend and a girlfriend that are having an argument because the boyfriend wants to go to a party and the girlfriend wants to stay home. This part has been planned for a while, and that's what they had all originally wanted to do. The day of the party comes, and now the girlfriend doesn't want to go and is being very adamant about staying home. He tells her that is fine and that she doesn't have to go, but that he is going to go, at least. The girlfriend then decides that she is going to go to the party because she doesn't want him to go without her. At the party, however, she sits in the corner and has a terrible time. She doesn't even try to have fun, even though she easily could have just stayed home and done the same thing. This is a manipulative tactic that is seen too frequently. People who are clearly in bad moods will try to make everyone else have those same negative emotions, rather than trying to bring themselves into a positive mindset. It isn't seen as manipulation because it's not like they're outright telling people to have a bad time or running around the party being mean. They are still present, and by being in a group with people, there is a certain responsibility to be an active member. This doesn't mean being the life of the party, but it should involve at least an effort to be a little more positive in order to allow others to have fun and not have to worry about whether or not someone else is enjoying their time. None of us have to live like this. However, we are all in charge of our own emotions, and it is time that we start to bring that power back into our lives. Ways to put an end to your manipulation. The best way to be certain that you won't be in the center of someone else's manipulation is to be highly aware of the things that you are promised and what you deserve as a human being. You should always practice increasing your emotional intelligence and look for ways that you can consistently improve your mental health. It will all start with ensuring that you are highly aware of the things that you are entitled to. Others might influence if you are feeling a certain way, but it will always be up to you to act on this emotion. The more you can remember your basic human rights, the easier it will be to be sure of yourself and able to stand up and against manipulation. Always remember that unless you take respect away from someone else, you deserve to be respected, just because of your skin color, gender, age, location, wealth, or anything else in your life. You do not deserve to be treated any differently. If you are meeting someone for the first time, then they should be giving you respect right away. If they don't, then this is their own issue that they need to work out themselves. If you are meeting someone for the first time and you are immediately rude or insulting to them, of course they aren't necessarily going to treat you the same way. You deserve to be respected. You are entitled to be happy as well. Just because another person is miserable does not mean that you have to be unhappy as well. Everyone else is in control of their own emotions, and though you could joke and laugh and make someone happier, you still wouldn't be fully responsible for the way that they feel. We are all in charge of our own emotions. Next time someone makes you feel guilty for being happy, remind them that this is your fundamental right. Back to the example where the girlfriend was upset at the party. Her partner has every right to still be happy and enjoy himself regardless of her negative mindset at the time. You will always be entitled to your feelings, and as long as you are not hurting someone, you are allowed to express these feelings however you choose. If someone makes you feel guilty for being angry, stressed, or sad, then they are in the wrong. That is not ok to do. If you choose to handle that anger or stress by punching a wall, then by all means, they are allowed to be mad. You have gone beyond expression of emotions and turned it into aggression inflicted externally. Remember to separate emotion from action. If you tell someone that you are angry, and they state that you are wrong or that you shouldn't have said that, then they are in the wrong. This is common when it comes to gaslighting. Let's imagine another scenario. Two best friends, this time instead of a heteronormative couple. There are two girls, Ashley and Megan. Ashley is having a small party and decided to invite a maximum of 4 people so she could have an intimate night with her loved ones. One of these friends is Megan. Megan shows up to the party and brings about 6 other people that Ashley has never met. Being the passive girl she is, Ashley lets these people stay, and they have a somewhat decent night, until one of Megan's friends gets too drunk and breaks one of Ashley's favorite plates. Ashley asks them to leave, and the night is over. The next day, Ashley brings this up to Megan. She states something such as, "It made me really upset that you invited people without asking, and it ended up resulting in one of my things getting broken." A healthy response from Megan would be an apology, and she would understand where Ashley was coming from. Instead, Megan might be the type to consistently manipulate, and she ends up saying one of these things instead. "You're overreacting. It wasn't a big deal at all. You're taking this way too far." This is called gaslighting. Megan is making Ashley feel as though she is crazy for even bringing this up in the first place. Megan is entitled to her own feelings as well, and maybe she does think that Ashley is overreacting. However, she should not be making her feel guilty about bringing this up. Both girls are entitled to their opinion, and the discussion shouldn't be about which one is right. They should be looking for a mutual understanding instead. Megan might also say something such as, "You're making me feel really guilty for even bringing this up." Ashley might have influenced some of that guilt in Megan, but it is not Megan's right to blame Ashley for her emotions. Megan is in control of whether or not she feels guilty, and that is not something that she gets to blame Ashley for. That is also called gaslighting and wouldn't be done in a healthy relationship. We have to remember that we also have the right to ensure that we are protecting ourselves. If this means cutting someone out of your life, or at least taking a break from them, then we are entitled to this. If we decide that someone in our life is toxic, then it is not our responsibility to keep them around. They might be an individual that even needs us in a way, but you are only responsible for yourself and your happiness. So it is not selfish to take a break. Remember that you will always have the right to say no whenever you want. Don't do anything that makes you feel uncomfortable, no matter how hard someone else might be trying to persuade you to do so. It is always going to be your right to use those 2 letters next to each other. If people start leaving you or aren't as involved in your life because you don't say no as often as you used to, then good riddance. It was clear that they were just using you because you might have been passive, so it's perfectly fine for you to move on. When it comes to actually being in the moment of being manipulated, remember that there are still some things you can do to help you out of this situation. Always ask them further questions so that they explain themselves more. Make them really question what it is that they might be asking you. If they are being vague, always ask why more and more in order to get you to a place where you are able to fully understand what it is that they are asking. If you aren't sure whether or not you should do something, ask yourself if they would do the same. If the answer is no, then that gives you a little insight into whether or not you should be doing what they are asking of you. Everyone else should be respecting your boundaries. Remember the things that you are entitled to, and don't allow someone else to make you feel bad or guilty about being yourself. There will always be manipulators in your life, some more skilled than others. No matter what happens, you will always have the right to walk away and protect yourself. Anyone that truly loves you is going to be understanding and forgiving, and those who are just manipulating you will eventually go away after you cut them off. Conclusion. When you are ready to finally get what you want out of life, and you are tired of waiting for others to hand it to you, and you are tired of being nice and finding that life is passing you by with no benefits, promotions, or anything else that you need to reach your goals, then make sure to check out this guidebook and learn how to make dark psychology work for your needs. This book will help you to be more self-conscious when dealing with other people. You will learn to keep your guard so that you are not easily manipulated. On the other hand, you can use the techniques you have learned in this book positively influence others for your own good and their good as well. Most importantly, you will gain skills and knowledge of choosing and determining your own destiny by making the right decisions. It is not too late to take control of your destiny. Now that you have the information, you can help to positively influence others around you by helping them to take control of their lives. So many dark deeds happening around the world. It is possible for one to take control of their lives by avoiding becoming a victim of manipulators.